Chapter 67. This broken stone could be sold for money? That black shirt old man frowned, looking over in confusion. Apart from those 2 knife marks, he couldn't see anything special about it. Apart from that, there was a shallow mark, who knows what kind of weapon made it. At first, he didn't care, but just as the old man was about to shift his eyes away, he was startled. A bright light flashed in his dry eyes as he looked at the huge rock again. Then, this old man couldn't shift his eyes away. However, this stone also depends on whose hands it lands in. In front of normal people, it is naturally worthless, but in the eyes of people like me, it can't be bought with money. Such a simple explanation of the mysteries of the sword. If this item was sold, it would be worth at least 200 grade 4 beast crystals. If it was given to my uncle who is searching for a successor, it would be able to extort a lot, selling a huge favor. Lei Dong said gleefully, actually getting more and more excited, slowly entering a fantasy state. If it was passed down to the future generations, then it would be even more amazing. In the past, the top knife god Lei Dong comprehended the martial path at the Falling Cloud waterfall before he mastered his knife technique. He coincidentally met the future sword god Zhong Shou and they discussed the knife and sword path, which was why they got along so well and became brothers. Don't you think that such a feeling is really poetic and legendary? Oh yeah, this stone might be able to be sold for a sky-high price in the future. My children and grandchildren are lucky. I heard that when the knife saint was young, a marble stone was sold for 10,000 grade 4 beast crystals. What about this stone of mine? This is really putting me in a spot. Men, quickly carry this stone away. If it is hurt, I will hold all of you responsible. The black shirt old man's face twitched, unable to say a word. After a long while, he calmed down. Sir, is this really left by that Gantian mountain prince Zhong Shou? I heard that this person is only 13. 13 years old, and he has already seen sword intent? Why would I lie to you? When have you ever seen your family's lord lie, or even say half a word of a lie? And in the future, he is my brother, you have to call him second young master. Lei Dong laughed coldly as he looked at the giant stone. The stone weighed over 100 tons, and it took the combined efforts of several dozen black-robed servants to barely move it. But even after exerting all his strength, his face turned red and swollen, he still couldn't raise it. Lei Dong was helpless, thinking to himself that these fellows were really too stupid. With a swing of the 150-foot giant saber, the excess stones were shaved off in a few strokes, leaving only the 3 essential marks. He frowned inwardly. With Zhong Shou's sword mark here, wouldn't the saber mark he left behind seem a little weak? He had been completely defeated by his younger brother. If this was seen by future generations, wouldn't he be laughed at? It was a little unsightly. Lei Dong rolled his eyes and slashed out 2 more times. Stone shards flew everywhere, completely covering the original saber mark. Only then did he nod his head in satisfaction. Only then did the black-clothed old man come back to his senses. Then, he sucked in a breath of cold air. In this world, there really is a 13-year-old person who can communicate with the sword spirit. This crown prince was really good at concealing himself. If that's the case, this sworn brother of His Excellency will definitely have extraordinary achievements in the future. This old servant will rush over to Cloud Saint City later to protect him. Sir wants to give this stone to Old Master. Do you want to bring second young master under Old Master? Although I have such intentions, he might not be interested in it. My brother is soft on the outside but tough on the inside. He looks humble, but he is proud and a little awkward. You can go, but you can't let him find out. Just follow him in the dark. I also want to see his ability. Be it if he wants to take the Monster King position or leave Donglin Cloud Continent, it's up to him. Lei Dong nodded his head and said a few words. He saw that the servants had already moved the giant stone, which had shrunk by 4/5, onto the carriage at the side. He walked to the river and shone his reflection on the river water, only to see that what was reflected in the water was a sloppy man. He couldn't help but mock himself once more. 3 years of comprehension, traveling to hundreds of sceneries in the world. Apart from those sceneries and sabers, there was nothing else in my heart. Who knew that in such a short time I would become like this? If Miss Jinru saw this, who knows how much heartache she would feel? Sighing, Lei Dong actually raised that exaggerated 15-foot giant saber and used it to shave his beard. After washing up a little, he changed into another person. His aura changed once more. His body was still muscular, but his face was handsome and square, giving off a scholarly aura. His right hand holding the saber, he looked into the sky in high spirits, his saber intent wildly spreading out. Maniac Saber Lei Dong, who had disappeared for 3 years, had returned today. Who knows if those old friends in the central cloud continent were ready? Just as he looked proudly into the sky, Lei Dong's brows suddenly furrowed. Who is that in the sky? Is she using energy to fly in the air? In his field of vision, 2 small dots suddenly appeared. Looking from afar, it seemed like 2 girls were flying in the air. Coincidentally, he recognized the 2 of them. It's Taiyuan's sect, that old lady? Taiyuan Fairy Shui Lingbo? How did this person come to Donglin Cloud Continent? The person behind is 7 Spirit Sect Zhao Yinran. Suddenly, his heart moved as he thought back to what Zhong Shou said before. The person who said that Zhong Shou's sword path was one with the spirit was the latter. I was wondering why this old lady would come here for no reason. So it was to find a disciple. Kiki, if my brother became a Taiyuan sect disciple, wouldn't it be boring? His lips curled up as Lei Dong suddenly rose into the air. A saber shadow suddenly swept across the sky. The reaction of the person in the air wasn't slow either. Her body flashed slightly and she dodged. One of them was Zhao Yinran. The one in the lead was dressed in a red robe, her face ashen green as she swept downwards. Which crazy person doesn't want his life? When she saw the person charging up, Shui Lingbo's expression instantly changed. Maniac Saber Lei Dong. You don't have enough problems, you actually dare to come and offend me. I have things to do now and don't have time to bother with you. Cram. She suddenly used her feet to heavily step down, and another saber energy was smashed apart. Lei Dong laughed out loud. Today, my saber intent has reached the small success stage, and the 100-dragon saber has increased to 25. I was just thinking of finding someone to test my strength. Taiyuan Fairy, what a coincidence that you came. The saber shadow flashed and disappeared. In the next moment it covered the entire sky. The saber light was like a dragon, pretty much covering the entire sky. Shui Lingbo's gaze suddenly became extremely cold. At this moment, Lei Dong's saber was like a landscape painting made of ink, unrestrained and unrestrained. Although there was no killing intent, that fighting intent was extremely strong. Her expression was as cold as ice, sharp to the extreme. She pulled out a red sword and stabbed down from the sky. The sword's shadow exploded, like a blazing sun in the sky. It clashed with the rising saber glow. At this moment, anyone who dared to block her could only die. Asterisk clang. Asterisk along with a shrill noise, countless fierce gusts of wind suddenly burst out from the sky. The entire sky was filled with sand and stones. The trees on the ground were either broken or uprooted under the force of the wind. Numerous beasts and birds in the forest scattered in all directions. Zhao Yinran, who was not far away, was leisurely looking on from the side. Although she was unable to control the energy to travel, when she opened up a red umbrella, she fell down. Her body was as light as a feather as she landed. Just as she fell 4,000 feet, Zhao Yinran's eyes suddenly focused. She looked below at a stone placed on the carriage. Although the energy in the air was like a wave, it couldn't attract her interest at all. Her eyes were fixed on that giant stone. In the next moment, she smiled in understanding. So that was the case. With that person's personality, how could such a peerless treasure be hidden in the sand from the beginning to the end? Chapter 68. Weird. The spiritual energy wave just now didn't seem right. Zhong Shou stuck his head out of the window and looked in the direction he came from. Just now, he had been meditating to strengthen his divine soul. However, all of a sudden, a powerful wave of spiritual energy came from afar. It caused his soul power source to be damaged. Luckily, the two foxtails behind him calmed down the nearby heaven and earth spiritual energy and made it calm down. At this moment, looking to the west, one could vaguely see flames soaring into the sky from that direction. In this pitch-black dawn, it was really eye-catching. Looking at the situation, did an ascended ancestor make a move over there? Moreover, there are more than two of them, peak ascended. Thinking about that, Zhong Shou's brows furrowed slightly. The estimated distance was exactly 600 miles away, which was where the falling cloud waterfall was. No wonder Lei Dong wanted Yin Yang to bring him away. However, he wasn't worried in his heart, as Lei Dong was obviously at the peak of the ascended realm. In this era, even those spiritual grandmasters needed to hide in spiritual lands. An ascended ancestor was enough to do whatever he wanted. Unless he was ambushed by many same-grade martial cultivators or a grandmaster, he wouldn't be in any life-threatening danger. Even if he couldn't beat them, he would be able to run. Who knows which ascended expert it is? Lei Dong's knife intent is at the small success stage, just half a step away from the grandmaster realm. For this person to be able to fight with him and cause such a commotion, he definitely isn't a nameless person. This matter didn't concern him. Zhong Shou shook his head and didn't care. On the contrary, Cloud Saint City was already in sight. Donglin Cloud Continent had a total of 50 provinces and 900 cities. However, they were all scattered and broken. Often, one city could be considered a country. Half of it was due to martial cultivators being arrogant and having some strength. They weren't willing to be controlled. The other half was due to the many hidden sects purposely controlling and restricting them. Even the largest country only had 3 provinces, and they didn't have complete control over them. Cloud Saint City was also considered to have some power in the east of the continent. Although it was backed by the Sudian mountain range, it was located on a 10 million mu wide plain. It was also close to the East Cloud Ocean and had some trade benefit. When the cloud crossing carriage arrived at the city gate, the sky was still not completely bright, and the city gate was not open. However, there were already dozens of carriages parked at the intersection. Yin Yang had no choice but to drive the carriage to the side of the road. After waiting for a while, they suddenly heard the sound of thunder. A group of knights were galloping towards them. Each of them was riding on a cloud stepping foal. They were travel-worn and had sabers and spears in their hands. Their expressions were cold. Zhong Shou did not care at first, but when the group of knights approached, he realized that the people leading them were Zhongling and Feng Xiao, whom he had met before. However, for some reason, their faces were covered by a veil, making it impossible to see their faces clearly. When the two of them saw him, they were also startled. Zhongling directly rode her horse to the window, looking in with a mocking smile. What a coincidence, who knew that after we parted at Pill Spirit Mountain, just a month later I would bump into Brother Shou again. This time Zhongling is here to buy some cloud whale bones to make arrows. Why did cousin come to Cloud Saint City? Are you really planning to go out to sea? Zhong Shoxin was really helpless, too lazy to bother with this cousin of his. He knew that the cloud whale bones that were a specialty of the East Cloud Ocean were really light and were the best material to make arrows. There was also fish glue that could be used to make bows. The various powers in Donglin Cloud Continent would send people to buy some every year. This Zhongling's excuse was really good. However, the 2 times they met, The meaning of the words were pretty much the same, which was a little boring. Looking at the veil on this person's face, Zhong Shou had an idea, smiling. Cousin, why are you covering your face? Is it because you can't see people? Is your face injured? Let me guess, it was done by people from the Lingyun sect, right? Zongling's eyes opened wide in rage. A month ago, he was slapped by that Lingyun sect disciple, and he thought that it would be fine in a few days. However, who knows what vicious methods that person used, but the palm print on his face didn't fade even after a month, instead becoming clearer and clearer. During this month, he invited a few spirit masters to take a look, but they didn't know what happened. He also invited a few Xiantian masters, but they also had no idea. He had no choice but to cover his face with a veil. Zhong Shou's words hit his sore spot. During these days, he had been guessing that what happened at the foot of Pill Spirit Mountain had something to do with this Zhong Shou. Who knows, maybe he purposely used the Lingyun Vermilion token to invite the Lingyun sect to attack and humiliate him. His eyes became colder and colder, and those cavalry soldiers all surrounded over. The surrounding atmosphere also became dark and cold. Zhong Shou's eyes squinted, and he could feel that there were 2 or more Xiantian auras hidden within this group of people. Feng Xiao was more or less worried, walking over and tugging at Zongling's sleeves, using his eyes to warn her. Just as Zongling was hesitating, Yin Yang, who was in front of the carriage, scoffed coldly. Along with an indescribable might, all the horses within 100 feet neighed in fright and quickly retreated. The expressions of Feng Xiao and Zongling changed once more. Exchanging glances with one another, they both understood what was going on. They all thought that the Xiantian expert who killed Qi Shao that day was actually this person. Zongling thought about it for a moment and then her face relaxed. Cousin, you just need to be sharp-tongued. There has been no news of Uncle for a month, and he hasn't come out from the Oblivion Cloud Ocean. I only hope that after a few days you can still laugh. Do you know how many people around here want to take your life? Zhong Shou shook his head. He didn't need anyone to remind him, as he could feel the gazes around him filled with killing intent. He smiled slightly. As for how many people want to kill me, I don't know. However, I do know that if I die in front of Brother Zongling, Cousin Zong sure won't be able to escape responsibility in the future. Zongling was about to leave, but when she heard those words, her expression froze up once more, and she stared over viciously. Coincidentally, at this moment, the city gates of Cloud Saint City suddenly opened. A group of cavalry charged out of the city gates, but they were dressed in fresh clothes and riding on horses, giving off a majestic aura. The 6 people at the front were all Xiantian masters, riding on Zhong Shouxin's Windrider foals. They were covered in heavy armor, and their strong aura was not hidden at all. They galloped all the way to Zhong Shou's carriage before stopping. A middle-aged soldier stepped out. After he got off his horse, he bowed respectfully towards the carriage window. Is the Gantian Mountain Prince Zhong Shou in the carriage? Zhong Shou didn't need to think too much to know that it was because of his brother Lei Dong. He wasn't surprised, expressionlessly nodding his head and saying, "Yes." When the middle-aged soldier heard that, he was delighted. The city lord instructed a few days ago that the prince would come over today. Our Cloud Saint City will treat him well and treat him like the city lord. Prince, please follow me into the city. His words paused as he swept around coldly. Especially when he looked at Zongling, his eyes were filled with killing intent. Let me inform all of you that the Gantian Mountain Prince is an important guest of our Cloud Saint City. If anyone dares to have any bad intentions, they will be enemies with our Cloud Saint City. The city lord has said to kill without mercy. The group of cavalry didn't need any instructions, and they all moved their horses to the sides. They protected the cloud crossing carriage in the middle as they headed towards the city gate. Zongling and Feng Xiao exchanged glances with one another once more, their expressions uncertain. They only felt that they couldn't see through this Zhong Shou. How did he suddenly have connections with Cloud Saint City? In the next moment, Zhong Shou popped his head out and said a few words to the middle-aged soldier. The latter instantly looked back coldly. Are you Zhongling? Cloud Saint City doesn't welcome you, and we won't do business with you. Cram. Zhongling's face, which was hidden behind the veil, instantly turned green. P.S. Thanks to everyone's support, I didn't drop off the new books list last week without any recommendations. Thank you. Chapter 69. Only when they entered the city did Zhong Shou find out that the Cloud Saint City City Lord wasn't in the city. The person in charge within the city was someone else. However, the martial masters protecting them were still really respectful and careful. Even those few Xiantian masters didn't dare to be arrogant. They directly arranged for the three of them to stay in a place close to the City Lord Manor. The area was heavily guarded, and there were even 2 Xiantian masters guarding it. They obviously knew about Zhong Shou's current situation. This was exactly what he wanted, and he didn't have to go and greet them. For the next few days, he hid in his room. Occasionally, he would ask Yin Yang and Chu Shui to do things, and he wouldn't go out at all. First, he drew up some diagrams and asked Yin Yang to find the only weapon shop in the city that had 8 high-grade spirit blacksmith. He ordered another 50 talisman knives, as well as some weird parts, herbs, and pill furnaces. This time, the talisman knives he wanted could all be considered high-grade talisman weapons. Even if he had all the materials, with 8 high-grade spirit blacksmiths working together, it would take at least half a month to complete the forging and get the good. However, the latter could be completed in just a few days. He made another list and bought some pills, some metals and bones of elite beasts to feed Little Gold. Apart from that, he also bought dozens of books that he couldn't understand. Then, he practiced the Great Blazing Sun Fist all day. Without the help of pills, Zhong Shou bought a few bottles of Cloud Whale Essence Oil and rubbed it on his body. Although the Cloud Whale was called a whale, it could fly freely in the air and roam the Cloud Ocean in the east. Its wings were short and small, and its flying speed was far from that of a bird. However, its body was huge, and in the Cloud Ocean, apart from the whaling ships of the human race, it had no natural enemies. Its bones were extremely light, but they were as hard as steel, extremely sturdy. This Cloud Whale Essence Oil was made by taking the oil from its bone marrow and adding in some spiritual herbs. It was also the highest grade of bone-forging medicine. The effect of the medicine wouldn't be instant, but it wouldn't have any hidden dangers. Every time Zhong Shou smeared the oil all over his body, he could feel his whole body burning up. However, every time he took the opportunity to execute a set of great blazing sun fists, he would feel his body relax, and the pleasure was indescribable. However, the effect of bone tempering was not very obvious. Martial arts practice internal tempering, embryonic breathing, bone marrow, qi and blood, 5 viscera, 6 viscera, skin and flesh. Only bone tempering and skin tempering were the most difficult. It was difficult for the skin to bear force, so it was extremely difficult to train. One could only borrow the help of medicinal pills or use water to polish the skin to make it tough and durable. As for bone tempering, the bones were hard and dense. Even the power of medicine would find it difficult to penetrate. Ordinary spirit medicines are basically unable to. After training bitterly for 3 days, there was very little progress. Although Zhong Shou wasn't discouraged, his thoughts of improving his chakra meridians faded. His soul power, on the other hand, was still growing day by day. With the heaven-devouring origin conversion technique and the heavenly mirror soul illumination technique, his soul power was growing rapidly. The last time he broke through was 20 days ago. However, in this short period of time, he had already accumulated to the peak of the soul observation realm. However, Zhong Shou still wasn't satisfied. In 15 days, I should be able to reach the soul calming realm. As for bone tempering, it would take at least 2 months. It is still too slow. To have the ability to protect myself, it seems like I still have to rely on that thing. Although it is a little inappropriate to speed it up, I can't care so much now. This Cloud Saint City was just inches away from that place. Zhong Shoksan also craved it. However, he was still able to calm down and continue to train in his fist techniques and meditate to train his soul. He also specially dug out a breath-restraining technique from his memory to train along with the energy-leading technique and Great Blazing Sun Fist. This cultivation method was created by people in the future. Usually, one could lock up all the energy in their body so that it wouldn't be wasted. Internal breathing leading technique to activate the vital energy and train the bones did have some effect. However, the reason why Zhong Shou trained in this breath-restraining technique was to prepare for that thing a few days later. It was an extremely important part. The cultivation method wasn't difficult and he also had experience in his last life. In just a few days, Zhong Shou had already trained it well. With just a thought, he could retract all the energy in his body. Even Chu Shui, who was learning along with him, could barely do that. Just as he reached the small success stage of the breath-restraining technique, Yin Yang finally took back those weird parts that he ordered. They were all crafted from the bones of the cloud whale, which was why they were all white. Each one of them had a weird shape. The runes that were carved on them were also really special. Yin Yang and Chu Shui looked on in a weird manner, suppressing their curiosity and not asking. Zhong Shou's face was filled with joy, like no one was around as he pieced these parts together. Not long later, these parts were all pieced together into one body. It looked like a human skeleton, only the skeleton was slightly wider, only the legs and waist were left. Apart from that, there was a groove at the waist. Yin Yang's expression changed. This is a mechanism technique? Although the set of bones in Zhong Shou's hands wasn't as good as the sword puppet of Lingyun's sect, it was still within the category of mechanism techniques. No wonder the things that he ordered before were so weird. I call this thing the wind-traveling spirit bone. It is a type of external bone. Zhong Shou smiled, directly putting the thing in his hands on his legs. It was actually a perfect fit to his body. He also placed a grade 2 wind element beast crystal into the groove, activating the spiritual patterns carved on the cloud whale bones. Zhong Shou only felt his body become light, walking effortlessly. His heart was filled with joy as he jumped up and down, all of which were extremely casual. Chu Shui didn't feel much, only feeling that it was a little weird. Yin Yang was extremely shocked, looking at it for a moment before nodding his head. It is indeed an amazing idea, really exquisite. Congratulations, Prince. Although Yin Yang doesn't know what the external bone is, I know that with this item, you will be able to walk freely in the future. Zhong Shou's lips curled up. How could the design of tens of mechanism technique grandmasters in the future not be exquisite? The so-called external bone was one of the branches of mechanism techniques 10,000 years later. It could be said that it was developed to the extreme. Even a person who didn't have the strength to truss up a chicken could have the strength to lift 1,000,000 kilograms if he had a top-grade external bone. Zhong Shou's wind-traveling spirit bone was one of the most basic and also the most common type. He purposely pieced it together just to use it as a means of transportation. Only today can I walk on my own without worrying about running out of stamina. However, this cloud whale bone is still a little lacking. It is still okay when I am rushing. However, when I am fighting, it is a little inconvenient. Moreover, the consumption of these wind element beast crystals is also huge. Zhong Shou shook his head. Naturally, a top-grade external bone could be used for fighting. However, in the later generations, this set of wind travel was specially designed for people with disabilities. It was said that no matter what kind of terrain it was, it would be like walking on flat ground. Even in the wilderness, one would be able to walk freely. However, what was sad was that he wasn't handicapped, but he was no different from a handicapped person. If he didn't have a carriage as a means of transportation, he would only need to walk for 4 hours before his stamina would be used up. With this item, he basically didn't need to use any strength to walk freely. Although it was much slower than a carriage, it was much more convenient. Although it is a little lacking, it is more than enough to take that item. Thinking about it in his heart, Zhong Shou covered himself with a large robe outside. He covered the wind-traveling spirit bone such that one couldn't see any traces of it. He then turned his gaze towards Yin Yang. Uncle Yin, tomorrow I am prepared to make a trip out of the city with Shui. This time you can stay in the city and don't need to follow us. Yin Yang was shocked. The chair behind him was instantly smashed into pieces. He suddenly stood up, but before he was able to say anything, Zhong Shou threw a few ancient books on the table in front of him. Uncle Yin, have you read the Great Desolate Sutra before? If you haven't, then you should know about this Cloud, Desolate Ancient Records and Desolate Ancient Beasts Sutra? Yin Yang's brows furrowed. The Great Desolate Sutra was something that all kids in Donglin Cloud Road had to read, so how could he not know about it? The Cloud, Desolate Ancient Records and Desolate Ancient Beasts Sutra were also widely spread. However, why did Zhong Shou mention these few books out of the blue? Chapter 70. The fourth line of the 37th page of the Great Desolate Scripture, the year the star fell, the god-bird lightning phoenix appeared in the east of the cloud continent. The 12th line of the 56th page, at the end of the desolate era, the lightning phoenix fought the sparrow dragon, blood splattering on the west spirit plains. There are also records of the cloud desolate era. The sparrow dragon injured the flame phoenix. The flame phoenix was defeated and fled 30,000 miles, its whereabouts unknown. The year of darkness, east of the cloud continent, near the ocean, the cry of a phoenix spread 3,000 miles. The cloud whale went crazy, 100,000 were injured. In the mountains of the East Ocean, numerous beasts died. As Zhong Shou spoke, the more Yin Yang heard, the more confused he got. The ancient books didn't record the years. They could only use the symbolic events of that year as a marker. What Zhong Shou said was the records of a few ancient books, talking about ancient history. However, what did it have to do with him leaving the city alone? In the next moment, Zhong Shou smiled, filled with confidence. I heard that the flame phoenix and lightning phoenix are inseparable. However, in the year of the flame desolate era, when the sparrow dragon injured the flame phoenix, where was the lightning phoenix? Why did it find trouble with the sparrow dragon 300 years later? God beasts usually take 1800 to 2000 years to give birth. From the year the star fell to the end of the desolate era was exactly 1700 years. Yin Yang frowned, slowly guessing what Zhong Shou meant. His eyes were filled with shock. The words that Zhong Shou said at the end seemed to come from beyond the heavens in his ears. It was blurry and he couldn't hear it clearly. After the desolate era, the cloud continent was broken into many pieces, split into the 5 cloud continents and many cloud islands. The east of the cloud continent is the current Donglin cloud continent. The so-called land near the ocean, the East Ocean Mountains, it must be referring to the Sudian mountain range. In the past, I was curious and researched numerous records in the college. Only then did I have some guesses. The place where the lightning phoenix laid its eggs was most probably at the Blood Valley Demon Corpse Mountain. As he said that, Zhong Shou's face revealed helplessness. Uncle Yin, you can't enter that place now. Walking on the street, Chu Shui looked around nervously. Young master, why don't we go back? If you want the Meridian Spirit Grass, why don't you ask someone else to help you pick it? It's not like we can't afford it. As for the lightning phoenix egg, it was all guessed by young master, it might not be there. Not long ago, he used the power of the dragon spirit Jade Wall and the blood cloud marrow to follow Yin Yang into the mythic master realm. However, at that moment, Chu Shui did not have the slightest bit of the demeanor of an expert. She looked around with worry. Zhong Shou, on the other hand, looked indifferent. This was the 11th time that Chu Shui had complained since they left the house. It went in one ear and out the other, so he pretended not to hear it. After much difficulty, he managed to convince Yin Yang and reluctantly agreed to let him and Chu Shui go outside the city. He had also spent a great deal of effort to quietly leave everyone's line of sight. How could he return so easily? The meridian spirit grass that Chu Shui mentioned was not much, but he definitely could not give up on that thing. At this moment, the two of them had already changed their appearances. Chu Shui's face was slightly yellow, her eyebrows thickened, and her eyes became smaller. Although she was still extremely beautiful, one could not see any signs of her original appearance. Zhong Shou was the same. He had the wind-traveling spirit bone on his body. He decided to just go with the flow. He looked much stronger, and his face also changed a little. Due to the aura restraining technique, the two of them looked like normal martial artists. This close to perfect appearance changing technique was one of the reasons why Yin Yang finally agreed. At this moment, apart from Chu Shui's slightly unnatural expression, there were no flaws at all. Unless there was a martial ancestor-level expert who could lock onto a person's soul, if not, there was basically no chance of recognizing them. Along the way they casually bought some things. As they got closer to the city gates, Chu Shui's brows furrowed more and more as she observed behind her. Zhong Shou found it amusing. He was too lazy to bother, casually walking out of the city gates. Just as he was about to head north, Chu Shui suddenly stopped, her body fixed on the spot. Zhong Shou was also shocked. Was there really someone who could see through his appearance-changing technique and follow him? Turning his head, he followed Chu Shui's line of sight and looked over. It was two girls who were galloping over from the main path in the distance. The one in front was dressed in a fiery red shirt. The one in the back was dressed in a water-green dress, riding on top of a cloud-stepping foal. She did not notice Zhong Shou and Chu Shui at the side, directly heading towards the city gate. Zhong Shou's brows instantly rose up. Who are these two people? Chu Shui's expression suddenly changed for a reason. These two women must be people she knew. Two Xiantians, one had to pay attention to them, especially when they were dressed in a fiery red shirt. The younger one was only 16 years old, attracting more and more attention. It's Miss Iren. Chu Shui only came back to her senses after a long while. Her face was filled with a loss of what to do. Zhong Shou still didn't understand, hurriedly explaining, "Young master, did you forget? Miss Iren is your fiancée. 8 years ago, you met her once in Xian Mountain City." Zhong Shou's memories instantly jumped out from those 13 years of memories, and he was enlightened. However, the phrase, "a girl changes 18 times between childhood and womanhood," was true. That little brat who liked to follow behind Zhong Shou's butt, without any aura to speak of. At this moment, her body was petite, her looks could not be said to be the most beautiful in the world, but she was no worse than Chu Shui. Between her brows there was a heroic spirit. Looking at her jade-like white skin, untouched by wind and frost, one could see that her martial arts had also reached the outer layer. At the peak of the body chakra level, she had already passed the internal training stage and entered the earth chakra Xiantian stage. However, her expression didn't show any arrogance. Although she was a little cold towards the soldiers at the city gates, she was still polite. Although her identity was noble, she didn't show any arrogance. This was his ex-fiancée? That Xian Mountain City princess? Zhong Shou thought back to the words that Yin Yang said to him before, and he couldn't help but laugh. He guessed that this person was most likely here to ask him to break off the engagement. Today, within this Cloud Saint City, there were all sorts of evil people mixed together. He felt an incomparably heavy pressure on his shoulders. The longer they dragged on, the longer Zhong Weiran would disappear from the Oblivion Ocean. Be it Gantian Mountain or their allies, they would only become more and more unrestrained. The next time they acted, It wouldn't be like the previous 2 times where they were just probing. Gantian Mountain definitely didn't lack Sciention masters. As for martial ancestor experts, there were thousands of them in Donglin Cloud Continent. He didn't have much interest in this so-called fiancée. He also didn't have the mood to return to the city to wait to meet this girl. He was too lazy to bother, pulling Chu Shui and heading north. Using 2 days to walk roughly 200 miles, he removed all the disguising items on his body that made him feel suffocating. Then, he directly entered a nearby valley, swiftly passing through the mountains. This place could be considered within the Sudian mountain range, but it was a branch of the east. The power of Lingyun's sect was already really small. The place that Zhong Shou wanted to go to was a place that all the martial artists in Donglin Cloud Continent didn't dare to breathe a word about. Within this 3,000 miles, it was the only place that Lingyun's sect couldn't influence. After walking for half a day in the mountains, Zhong Shou and Chu Shui's eyes suddenly widened. In front of him was an incomparably huge valley. Although it was surrounded by mountains, it was still a huge valley. Although it was surrounded by mountains, it was so wide that one couldn't see the end of it. In the distance, one could see some beasts in groups of 3 to 5 roaming about. However, they were different from him. Even those who were known for their gentleness had red eyes, giving off a strong bloodthirsty and violent intent. Chu Shui's face couldn't help but turn bitter. "Young master, are we really going to enter this blood valley? I heard that the beasts here are at least grade 2. They are even harder to deal with than the swamp wolves in the Black Soil Swamp. That Demon Corpse Mountain is even more dangerous. I heard that Sciention masters can't even enter. Those below Sciention rarely come out in one piece." Zhong Shou didn't care, taking out a bottle of medicine and rubbing it on his body. He smiled. "How is it so exaggerated? Shui, since you know that this is the Blood Valley, then do you know where it came from?" Chu Shui didn't understand in her heart, but she still said patiently, "I know a little. Legend has it that during the Desolate Era, there was a demon god of a different race that was killed here. As its intent didn't dissipate, as long as it was a living being, when it got close to where it fell, it would slowly lose its mind and become violent. It was said that be it humans or beasts, it was no exception, which was why it was called the Blood Valley. I also heard that there were many beasts that could raise their grade here or mutate, which was why every few years, there would be a beast flood that would rush here. That was also the most dangerous time for this Blood Valley." "That's right. However, the reason why the beasts here are like that is because of another reason. It has nothing to do with the intent of the demon god." Zhong Shou scoffed, taking out a medicine bottle and throwing it to the stunned Chu Shui. "Apply this. At least in front of grade 5 beasts you will be fine. Don't look at how little it is, but it is worth a lot of money." Chu Shui didn't believe it in her heart. She personally saw Zhong Shou use less than 30 silver to make a sauce. How could it be worth any money? As for the effects of the medicine that Zhong Shou said, she didn't believe it even more. However, thinking about how mysterious her young master was these few days, she applied it on her body and followed Zhong Shou into the Blood Valley. What was weird was that the smell of the medicine wasn't strong, only giving out a nice fragrance. The beasts that rampaged within the Blood Valley acted like they didn't see the two of them, not bothering about them. Even if they occasionally got close, when they smelled the scent, they would panic and flee into the distance. P.S. Opened a new supergroup, 130321260 Book Club for Pioneers. There aren't many people. It should be said that there isn't anyone. Pioneers' own group, saving it forever. Oh right, I recommend another book. White-Clothed 13ths, The World is My Enemy, Book number 225-3488. This fellow wrote a book about the history of the world. He also guaranteed that no matter how this book fails, he won't change his alias. I express my trust in him with some reservations. The World is My Enemy, a modern soul came to Yun country and merged with the hereditary Jianwu Marquis. However, because this Jianwu Marquis cultivated the monster race Blood Moon Truth Life Sutra, he became blind, the night mist killed, the sword danced and caused disasters. Anger overturned the blood ocean, the world was my enemy. Book ID equals 225-3488, book name equals The World is My Enemy. Chapter 71. Two small figures swiftly shuttled through the valley. Apart from those slightly bigger beast groups that they had to go around, along the way they were pretty much unobstructed. This medicinal liquid is really useful. Chu Shui opened her eyes wide, looking at those beasts that were fighting to avoid them in disbelief. Their faces were filled with fear, like the two of them were the true beasts that they feared. What was more shocking was that Zhong Shou was so familiar with this place. Along the way, he was really familiar with the path, pretty much not stopping at all. This valley was really spacious, and as long as one recognized the direction, they would be able to walk straight ahead. However, Zhong Shou's grasp of the characteristics and personalities of the various beasts here wasn't something that normal people could compare to. Chu Shui's heart was filled with questions, and she couldn't help but ask, "Young master, have you come to this blood valley before?" Zhong Shou didn't reply, only smiling mysteriously. Naturally, he had come to one of the most famous beginner regions in the God Emperor game. Moreover, he had fought numerous battles with the beasts here. It was also here that he started his martial path. However, this medicinal liquid didn't come from the game, but was invented in real life. Every year, there would be some hunters or people who loved to study beasts who would apply this medicine and enter the Blood Valley. The library that Zhong Shou worked in his last life coincidentally had the recipe for this medicine. Within this Blood Valley, there were the souls of the ancient alien race experts that didn't dissipate, causing Xiantian experts to stop outside of the Blood Valley. However, the reason why these beasts would have such a change, becoming bloodthirsty and violent, had nothing to do with it, but was due to the influence of another thing. Any beasts that were infected before would be sensitive to the smell of the medicinal liquid on his body, and would hate it. Zhong Shou didn't bother. Chu Shui couldn't help but pout angrily as she followed behind. However, her eyes were filled with wariness, afraid that some beasts would suddenly attack and hurt Zhong Shou. Although the medicinal liquid was good, it evaporated really quickly. Every 4 hours, he had to wipe it all over his body again. Zhong Shou didn't think much of it. Instead, it was a feast for the eyes. He kept turning his head to look at them from time to time. Chu Shui, on the other hand, blushed every time. The Blood Valley was only about 10 miles wide, but it was long and narrow. The two of them used half a day to walk roughly 100 miles. Looking ahead, there were grade 3 beasts appearing and disappearing. Zhong Shou's figure also stopped abruptly. The higher the grade of the beast, the more intelligent it would be. Even if he was infected by that thing's aura, he could still barely maintain his original self. Naturally, the medicinal concoction on their bodies was even less effective. Naturally, these grade 3 beasts weren't at such a level. What he was truly worried about were those elite beasts that had reached the 5th grade and were comparable to the human race Xiantian experts. Chu Shui also knew that this place was dangerous. She tapped the space between her eyebrows with her finger, and then a divine light burst from her eyes. "Protect the Emperor!" Wisps of smoke instantly gathered in front of the two of them. Its body was 10 feet long, and a cold energy spread all about. Its claws and teeth were sharp, and a fierce glow shone in its eyes. It was the dark chill tiger that they had snatched back then. The day before they left the city, Zhong Shou helped to subdue it. Although it was only a grade 3 spirit beast, the aura of a grade 5 beast was still there. It caused the nearby beasts to be even more fearful. Who knows if it was because they both had the bloodline of a tiger, but there seemed to be a connection between the man and beast. Not only did Chu Shui's aura grow, but the strength of the dark chill tiger was also close to grade 4. The bloodline of this dark chill tiger and Chu Shui are really compatible. Unfortunately, Shui's strength is too low. If her soul power could enter the out-of-body realm, she could use the power of the talisman to strengthen this dark chill tiger to grade 4. Taking a look, Zhong Shou retracted his gaze. He started to carefully choose the path and continue to walk deeper in. The main thing was to differentiate the sense and observe the distribution of the beasts. Any place where high-grade beasts were, the surrounding beasts would avoid them. It was really spacious and easy to identify. This was also the experience he had learned in his last life. However, after walking for a few miles, he heard the sounds of people in front of him. Zhong Shou looked out, only to see a bunch of people fighting against the beasts. There were only 7 or 8 of them, but they were all really strong. Among them, 2 of them were using talismans. They were actually spirit cultivation realm spirit masters. Although they were facing a group of 40 and above grade 2 tooth wolves, they were still able to handle it. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed, feeling weird in his heart. Although the Blood Valley was dangerous, it wasn't that there were no people around. There were some beasts and herbs that were unique to this place. However, there were very few people who would choose this time to enter this place. Shaking his head, Zhong Shou was too lazy to bother about them. He activated the wind-traveling spirit bone in his body and was prepared to take a detour. However, just as the 2 of them passed by, a voice called out. A voice called out, "Is that junior brother Zhong Shou?" The voice was under the interference of the beast roars and the intense battle noises, unable to be heard. Helplessly, Zhong Shou's body was extremely familiar with the sound and was extremely sensitive to it. His body couldn't help but freeze. He turned his head in shock, only to see a girl looking over. Her smile was bright as she waved her hands over in surprise. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed. Then, all the memories regarding this girl appeared in his mind. In the next moment, he felt his head hurt. He remembered that this girl was called Gong Shinran. She was a senior sister of his in Linhai College. There wasn't anything special about her. Not only was her background normal, but her looks were also normal. However, to that Zhong Shou who had already disappeared, it was etched into his heart. She was the only girl who took care of him consistently in the first year of his life in Linhai. One could even say that she was one of the spiritual pillars of that Zhong Shou in Linhai College. It was also because of this girl that she left the college to complete her studies. This caused Zhong Shou, who had just suffered from a broken heart, to be in total despair, a full 2 years of depression. Speaking of which, that fellow who had already disappeared was really a playboy. In just a short year in Linhai College, he had already fallen in love with 2 girls. He wanted to not bother and continue to leave from the side. However, his feet seemed to have grown roots and he was unable to take half a step away. Just as Zhong Shou was hesitating, the martial cultivators in front had already killed a large half of the tooth wolves. Gong Shinran left the group, using talisman techniques to drive a breeze and fly over. After confirming that it was Zhong Shou, her expression was filled with surprise. "It really is you? Why did junior brother come to this Blood Valley?" Suddenly, she recalled that Zhong Shou was unable to cultivate and his soul ocean hadn't been opened up. Gong Shinran sized up Zhong Shou once more, her brows furrowing. Only when she saw Chu Shui at the side as well as the close-to-grade 4 dark chill tiger did her expression relax. However, she still frowned. "How dangerous is this Blood Valley? As the Prince of Gantian Mountain, your identity is really noble. Why did you take the risk to come here?" Zhong Shou laughed bitterly, who knew what was going on these few days. Yesterday he bumped into his fiancée and today he coincidentally bumped into the person he had a crush on. In his last life and this life, he had seen numerous beauties. However, this Gong Shinran's looks could only be considered delicate and pretty, but it made his heart throb. His throat was dry and he couldn't speak. He suddenly thought back to how gentle and close this girl was in Linhai College. Suddenly, he was touched by the concern in Gong Shinran's words. His heart was in a mess. Chapter 72. So senior sister is also here. Closing his eyes and taking in a deep breath, Zhong Shou tried his best to calm down his surging vital energy. When he opened his eyes, his mental state had recovered, his face was filled with joy. Junior brother heard that there is a meridian spirit grass here that is beneficial to my dual meridian body. Which is why I came to take a look. Why did senior sister come to Blood Valley? Even if you want to train, there are many other places, so why come to such a dangerous place? In his heart, he was surprised. In Zhong Shou's memories, when Linhai College disciples reached the spirit cultivation realm, they needed to head out and travel to various places where spiritual veins gathered. Only when they reached the out-of-body realm could they return to the college. The current Gong Shinran obviously hadn't completed the cultivation of this realm. Speaking of which, the senior sister that he admired did indeed have some talent. 19 years old, and she had already entered the spirit cultivation realm. Such an achievement was something that many spirit masters could only envy. In Linhai College, she was highly valued by the teachers. You also know that this is a dangerous place. Gong Shinran snorted and shook her head bitterly. How am I doing this for experience? Do you think I am the same as you? No matter how arrogant I am, I wouldn't easily come here to take risk. I wouldn't choose this place to nurture my soul and train my heart realm. Isn't it better to casually walk around Donglin Cloud Continent? Do you remember what I told you in the past? In the past, our Gong family had a day-wandering realm spirit master. 3,000 years ago, we were the strongest in Donglin Cloud Continent. However, for some reason, he fell in Blood Valley, causing our Gong family to fall. This time I came to Blood Valley to search for the items left behind by my ancestor. In a few days, when I reach the out-of-body realm, I won't be able to enter anymore. Zhong Shou was busy flipping through the dusty memories in his mind, and as expected, he found some relevant memories. No wonder Zhong Shou liked this girl so much. She didn't have any schemes in her words and was really honest with people. She actually didn't hide such an important matter like the items left behind by an ascended realm expert from him. His concern for Zhong Shou was also sincere. Gong Shinran, however, did not sense anything amiss. She turned her head and said, I have the ancestral bloodline and can sense the whereabouts of the ancestral remains. Coincidentally, your senior brother Gao Yi is the young master of the Gao family in Dragon Spirit City. He could find some people to help him, so he came in to give it a try. If we can find him, that would be the best. If we can't, then we'll have fulfilled a long-cherished wish, and we'll have nothing to worry about in the future. He smiled and pointed behind him. Coincidentally, there was another spirit master in the group. He was tall and handsome, dressed in luxurious clothes, and exuded an air of nobility. At this moment, he nodded his head in a well-mannered manner. However, his expression was slightly cold. Zhong Shou instantly felt a slight prick in his chest, and his heart felt extremely bitter. For some unknown reason, he felt a slight dislike towards this senior brother Gao Yi. He also remembered this person. 2 years ago, when he was still in the academy, he was already very close to Gong Shinran, as if they were lovers. Now they were really together. However, in the depths of his heart, he was grumbling bitterly. This wasn't his true feelings. Although the consciousness of that Zhong Shou had already dissipated, the influence it had on this body and his consciousness was still really strong. This was also one of the reasons why those people who took over bodies weren't willing to merge with the original soul of the body. Apart from maintaining the purity of the soul, they also didn't want to be affected by the original soul. However, his situation was a little different. Coming to 10,000 years ago, apart from his mental state and consciousness, The spiritual sense and martial path intent that he had trained in his last life had all disappeared. He was really poor. When that Zhong Shou chose to merge with his consciousness, there was no way for him to reject. "This is your family's maidservant? She looks so cute." To be able to recruit a grade 3 dark chill tiger as a protector beast, she must be a spirit cultivation realm spirit master? TSK, as expected from the Prince of Gantian Mountain. However, aren't the two of you a little too reckless? During these 10,000 years, who knows how many cultivators and spirit masters have died in the Blood Valley? One of you is a little girl who has just reached the spirit cultivation realm, while the other is unable to cultivate. Only the two of you actually dared to enter? Oh right, is that meridian spirit grass really useful to you? Gong Xinran looked at Chu Shui with admiration, following which she scolded her mercilessly. In the end, she rolled her eyes and forcefully pulled Zhong Shou's hand, pulling him towards the group of martial masters. Walking close, she smiled sweetly towards Gao Yi. "Senior brother Yi, do you still remember junior brother Zhong Shou? What a coincidence to be able to meet an old friend from the school in this Blood Valley. He wants to go inside to harvest that meridian spirit grass. Have you heard of it?" Zhong Shou was filled with helplessness as he followed behind Gong Xinran. Carefully sizing up this group of martial masters, he couldn't help but feel shocked. Out of the 8 of them, apart from Gao Yi and Gong Xinran, who were spirit masters, the other 6 were all mythic masters. Just now when they killed those tooth wolves, they were all really clean and direct. It was like they had been through hundreds of battles. Just their ferocious aura wasn't something normal martial artists could compare to. Dragon Spirit City was one of the big cities in the east, and he had never heard of this Gao family. However, in Zhong Shou's original memories, they didn't seem weak, and were a famous family that rose up recently. "Zhong Shou? Of course I remember. You are the Prince of Gantian Mountain, right?" Gao Yi's lips curled up in a mocking manner, his eyes filled with unhappiness. However, it disappeared in an instant, quickly hiding it. He lowered his head and sighed. "I have never heard of meridian spirit grass. Within the Blood Valley, there are numerous spiritual herbs, and most of them are similar. Apart from those who harvest herbs all year round, it is hard for others to recognize them. Can junior brother Zhong Shou describe what this grass looks like? We can help you harvest it." Zhong Shou shook his head slightly. It was normal not to have heard of it. This meridian spirit grass, even in the future, had a really rare use. The alchemists and pill masters of this era naturally wouldn't know of its use. Even its name was something that only existed in the future. It was also because it couldn't be bought on the market, even in the nearby Cloud Saint City, that Zhong Shou would choose to harvest it himself. As for its characteristics, he also couldn't describe it. He could only try one by one and use his experience to identify it. "Why is it like this?" Gong Xinran's eyes dimmed, but they instantly brightened up. "Senior brother, since it's on the way, why don't we let the 2 of them follow us? Junior brother can't cultivate, and although this girl is a spirit cultivation realm spirit master, she is too young. To let them go alone to harvest herbs, I can't be at ease." Gao Yi's brows instantly furrowed, looking at Zhong Shou, a look of disdain flashed across his eyes. When he looked at Chu Shui, his eyes lit up. However, before he opened his mouth, a cold scoff spread out from the side. "Bring them along? Miss Xinran, are you joking, or do you think we are bodyguards? A piece of trash who hasn't even opened his chakra meridians should know his place. Usually those beasts are okay, but if we meet a group of beasts I won't bother. For a piece of trash like him who doesn't know life from death, it's best if he dies." The person who spoke was short and muscular, but his waist was round and his shoulders were thick. There were a few scars on his face, and when he spoke, he looked really vicious. He was actually a double cultivator, but his vital energy was really strong, covering his soul power. He shouldn't have reached the soul-observing realm. Before he finished, he was stopped by Gao Yi. Shut up. Gao Yi seemed to have a lot of prestige amongst this group of martial cultivators. Although Qi Nu was a little unwilling, he scoffed and didn't speak anymore. The former rubbed his brows in annoyance. Junior sister, don't you know how dangerous this trip is? There are countless beasts, and we can't even protect ourselves, so how can we bring people in? Forgive me for being direct, but this girl is okay, but junior brother Zong Shou doesn't even have the strength to truss up a chicken. To us, they are just a burden, adding to the danger. If you are really thinking for them, you should let them return. His words were also really impolite. When Zong Shou heard that, he wasn't angry, just looking on quietly. Although he had cultivated to the martial master realm, his soul power had reached the peak of the soul-observing realm. However, at this moment, he was using the aura restraining technique to retract his aura, making it look like he had never cultivated before. In his heart, he thought that it was best if that was the case. To him, if they traveled together, it would be the worst-case scenario. Although the people in front of him had decent combat strength, they would only drag down Chu Xuan and him. Not to mention that he had the medicine which could allow him to travel unobstructed in the Blood Canyon. Even if he didn't, the beasts here might not be able to stop him. Gong Xinran didn't know what he was thinking, her expression was helpless, but she still insisted, "Senior brother? They have already walked here, so how can we let them return? My junior brother is stubborn, and no matter how we persuade him, it will be useless. Once we leave, they will definitely follow behind. Why not let them obtain the meridian spirit grass, so that I can be at ease? If senior brother isn't willing, then I will accompany them." Chapter 73. Gao Yi's brows were tightly furrowed. Under Gong Xinran's pleading gaze, he hesitated for a long while before saying unwillingly, "Forget it. This lady is a spirit cultivation realm spirit master and can make up for what the few of us lack. That dark chill tiger can also be of help. You can follow, but you have to listen to my instructions." Gong Xinran was instantly delighted, forcefully pulling Zong Shou and Chu Shui into the group of martial cultivators. Zong Shou was speechless. He wanted to say that the Zong Shou of today wasn't the Zong Shou of the past and didn't need anyone to protect him. However, for some reason, he didn't reject, instead opening his mouth. "Thank you, senior sister. Oh right, I wonder if senior sister has been well these past 2 years?" Gong Xinran smiled and subconsciously looked at Gao Yi's back. "It's not good, but it's not bad. These 2 years, I have followed senior brother Gao around the eastern cities. We have been to many places and have seen many things. One really doesn't know how big the world is. Even in Donglin Cloud Continent, you and I are like a drop in the ocean. In the past, when we were in Linhai College, we were like frogs in a well. Luckily, senior brother Gao is calm and experienced. Although he comes from a big family, he takes good care of me." Her eyes were filled with sweetness and happiness. Zong Shou only felt like his heart was pierced by a needle, extremely tragic. Even when he was cultivating and his dual meridian body acted up, it wasn't as painful as today. He laughed bitterly to himself. In his last life, he had tasted the feeling of being heartbroken once. He originally thought that he would never have such a feeling of loss and sadness. Who knew that in this life, he would be able to passively experience it once more. The jealousy and pain in his heart was really annoying, but he couldn't get rid of it. Suddenly, he felt his body turn cold, only to feel a cold gaze filled with killing intent looking over from not far away. Zong Shoxin's heart turned cold as he looked over. Where his gaze passed, there was nothing unusual. He was also unable to discern where that gaze came from. Neither was it Qi Nu, who had spoken rudely to him before. Could it be an illusion? Am I overthinking things? Zong Shou pondered for a moment and felt that something was amiss. He carefully looked at the people in front of him, but he still didn't find anything unusual. In the end, He suppressed this doubt and buried it in the bottom of his heart. Gao Yi made some arrangements, and the group continued to move forward. A few mythic masters guarded at the front, and the dark chill tiger also joined in. Gong Xinran, Zhong Shou, and Chu Shui walked at the back. What was surprising was that Gao Yi was also with those mythic masters. He was a martial master and had a grade 3 wolf-type protector beast. When he occasionally made a move, his strength was actually similar to those mythic masters, perhaps even stronger. His figure was strong and fit, and he indeed had the ability to make girls fall in love with him. After walking awkwardly for a while, Zhong Shou realized that this situation was not bad. In this group of people, he was basically an idle person, and he didn't need to do anything. He was so relaxed that he didn't need to think about going around to avoid those beasts. Anyway, that Gao Yi had never counted on his combat ability. As for Chu Shui, she only needed to use her mind to command the dark, chill tiger to fight at the front. Occasionally, she would use spells like light body, clear eyes, and strengthening body to buff those mythic masters. It could train her spells and also strengthen her coordination with her first protector beast. Their speed was only a little slower than when the two of them were traveling alone. In just half a day, they had walked 80 miles and were close to the middle of Blood Valley. As for that dark chill tiger, Chu Shui was still a little unfamiliar with controlling it at the start, but now their minds were connected, and its actions were natural and casual, even more ferocious. Gong Xinran was a little surprised, turning around and asking curiously, "Is Junior Brother's body already better? After walking for so long, you aren't even panting. I remember that in the past, you would be tired after walking for 30 minutes. Just now, I thought you were going to rest." Zhong Shou wasn't surprised. His wind-traveling spirit bone was hidden close to his body, and the spiritual energy of the wind element beast crystal only circulated within. Spirit cultivation realm spirit masters wouldn't be able to notice it. At this moment, he didn't explain, only slightly nodding his head as a silent agreement. Then, he looked at the few mythic masters in front of him with a weird expression, probing, "Did Senior Brother Gao invite these mythic masters? What's their background?" Before this, he already felt that these few people weren't ordinary, and now that feeling was even stronger. Not only were their attacks fierce, but when they worked together, they had great chemistry with one another. Their martial techniques were all open, and they were obviously from the military. As for Gao Yi, they were also really experienced. Although they weren't as experienced as him, they avoided a large portion of the beasts and beast hordes. "I don't know." Gong Xinran shook her head. "A few days ago, after Senior Brother found out that my ancestor fell in Blood Valley, he specially sent a letter to summon them. They are either his friends or his subordinates. Anyways, they are really strong, and normal mythic masters of the same grade aren't their opponents." Samuraim's eyes flashed, and he didn't ask any more. In his heart, he agreed. Such people, any three of them would be able to kill Burning Sword Wu Wei on the spot. Even Yin Yang, who was at the 8th meridian of the bodily chakra level, might not be able to escape unscathed under the combined efforts of the 6 of them. However, thinking about it, it wasn't weird. As the young master of the Gao family, how could Gao Yi not have any capable people protecting him? Even if it was himself, Zhong Shou didn't believe that apart from Yin Yang, Zhong Weiran didn't arrange anyone else to protect him in the dark. Temporarily putting down his worries, Zhong Shoxin's heart was filled with wariness. Maybe it was because the strength of this group was really strong. Along the way, apart from a few grade 3 beasts and a group of tooth wolves, which brought them some problems, the rest of the beasts were all fine. The rest of the time, everything was smooth sailing. It was only when a huge mountain piercing through the clouds in the distance came into view, only a few li away, that the situation suddenly became tense. There weren't any grade 2 beasts here, and they were all grade 3 and above. Luckily, there weren't many of them, and they were spread out widely. However, as long as they met, they would fight to the death. Some beasts liked to form groups, and were the most problematic. This is the Demon Corpse Mountain. Walking to the foot of the giant mountain, Gong Shinran suddenly looked at the peak of the mountain in a daze. Legend has it that this mountain was formed after that alien race cultivator died. This place can turn even the kindest person into a bloodthirsty, evil person. It can also cause experts above the ascended realm to not dare to get close. Legend has it that this place has numerous treasures from the desolate era. The experts of the cloud world all coveted it. Zhong Shou was silent. Blood Valley and Demon Corpse Mountain were both intermediate beginner regions. However, 20 years later, it would be one of the top high-level dungeons in the God Emperor game. To enter, one would at least need to be at the Ascended Realm after opening the Heaven Chakra. However, at that time, he came here in the virtual world to kill monsters and level up, as well as the treasures and equipment within. To truly come here and be together with the people from 10,000 years ago. Only then could he truly feel the huge pressure of this Demon Corpse Mountain, as well as the respect and complicated emotions the people of Donglin Cloud Continent had for this mountain. As Gong Shinran said this, she gave out a self-mocking laugh. My ancestor most probably took the risk to come here for those legendary treasures. Who knows where he fell, and can we find it this time? Zhong Shou was about to speak when he suddenly heard Chu Shui exclaim. His brows furrowed as he looked over. He saw a gray shadow flying towards him from the right. That shadow could be seen, it was the shape of a rat, below its ribs were bat wings. Its speed was as swift as an arrow, in just a blink of an eye it was right in front of him. Chu Shui at the side was originally preparing a spell. At this moment, she wanted to stop and save him, but it was too late. Zhong Shou's eyes instantly turned cold. His right hand pressing down on the brand new pine pattern wind sword by his side. The reason why he retracted his aura was to avoid attracting those beasts. He didn't have any intention of hiding his strength. Chapter 74. His gaze turned sharp, and the vital energy in Zhong Shou's body slowly gathered and surged. Just as he was about to slash out, he saw Gong Shinran's body blocking in front of him. Her soul power surged as she reached out with her hand, scoffing coldly, "Back off." The 5 fingers of her jade hand suddenly opened. A small earth-yellow spiritual energy talisman appeared out of nowhere. A powerful repulsive force immediately forced the winged rat back, causing it to fly out. In the next moment, he was cleanly killed by a martial master who acted just in time with a single sword strike. So dangerous! I was so focused on talking that I nearly forgot this is Blood Valley. Looking on as the winged rat was sliced into pieces, Gong Shinran patted her chest. Gong Shinran patted her chest with lingering fear. Then, she looked at Gao Yi worriedly. "Senior brother Yi, are you tired? If you can't, then let's head back first or rest for a while. Although my ancestor left some items with him, there is no need to risk his life." Gao Yi gave out a bitter laugh. His eyes filled with apology as he turned his head. "It's okay, I was just careless. I can handle some grade 3 beasts. That winged rat was just too cunning. I was a little careless." Samuraim's eyes turned cold, looking at Gao Yi with a dark expression, a violent intent appearing in his eyes. What happened just now was just carelessness. His experience as a peak martial cultivator in his last life caused him to not give up on controlling the situation around him even when he was speaking. The timing of that winged rat charging over was just too coincidental. It wasn't like the few mythic masters nearby couldn't block it. Half a day ago, he felt that the gazes of Gao Yi and the others weren't right. At that time, he thought that it was an illusion and that he was just following them for a short distance. Gantian Mountain and Dragon Spirit City were too far away, and there were no conflicts of interest between them. This was why he always thought that it was an illusion. Only now was he truly sure. This Gao Yi did have killing intent towards him. He just didn't know the reason within. The two of them didn't have any grievances, and it didn't make sense to say that he was jealous because of Gong Shinran. This senior sister of his clearly only treated him as a younger brother. With this person's background and character, there was no reason for him to care about a publicly acknowledged trash like him who had accomplished nothing. Could it be that it was for Gong Shinran's ancestor's relic? It was just that this Gao Yi was the young master of the Gao family in Dragon Spirit City. What kind of rare treasures couldn't he get? A day-wandering realm spirit master, no matter how precious the items he left behind were. After all, 3,000 years had passed. Was it necessary to seal his mouth before he obtained those relics? The doubts in his heart grew stronger, but he could not figure out the reason. Zhong Shou did not dare to be careless. If there was a first time, there might be a second time. After thinking for a moment, he took out some medicine and smeared it on his body. After that, he took out a few silver needles that were as thin as hair and had runes drawn on them, and quietly pierced them into the back of his ears and the side of his eyebrows. Instantly, he felt his hearing and vision increase exponentially. Previously, he could only see about 500 feet in front of him. At this moment, everything within 10,000 feet could be seen. The volume of sounds in his ears also increased by close to 10 times. It was like that day when he had just opened up his soul ocean. Every action of the beasts nearby, even the wind blowing on the grass, could be heard in his ears. Originally, he wanted to control the surrounding movements and not be ambushed. However, just as Zhong Shou blocked out some useless sounds, he heard the few people in front of him discussing amongst themselves. What a waste, young master, this person, let's not spoil things. Jerk. Don't act on your own. This person's identity. If he dies in our hands, it won't be appropriate, we won't be able to escape responsibility. That little girl likes it, forget it. Don't worry. The Gantian Mountain Prince is someone who is about to die, just a piece of trash. So what if he knows? But that thing is really important, the less people know. This matter is simple, let's talk about it when we get out. There are already people waiting outside, even that person came. Their voices were all muffled and could not be heard clearly. Even if he used lip-reading, it was still incomplete. Only the fierce glow in the eyes of those few mythic masters caused Zhong Shou's heart to sink once more. When he wanted to listen carefully again, those people had already shut their mouths one after another. Gao Yi's face was still filled with a warm smile, and one could not see anything unusual about it. A thick killing intent rose up in his chest, and it was only suppressed after a short while. Chu Shui had the instincts of a wild beast, instinctively leaning towards Zhong Shou, one hand also holding onto her sword, her expression more wary. The beasts on this demon corpse mountain were even rarer, but their strength was even stronger, close to the peak of grade 3. Even that dark chill tiger was having a tough time dealing with them. If they wasted too much time and attracted the beast horde, it would be harder for them to escape. Luckily, it wasn't the beast wave period, so they were really careful. They tried their best to go up the mountain in a secluded area. Their luck was really good, and they only met 4 or 5 of them. Their strength was also really strong, and they did not meet any dangerous situations. After walking for about 2,000 feet, the group of people stopped halfway up the mountain and began to wander around. Zhong Shou was worried about Gong Shinran and wanted to act dumb, acting like he didn't notice anything. It was best if they dragged it out until night time, when the beast horde would go berserk, and make these people give up on going down the mountain. When they saw Gao Yi and the others, their faces were filled with impatience. Even Gong Shinran slowly frowned, wanting to say something but stopping herself. Zhong Shou knew that he couldn't drag it on any longer. Sighing to himself, Zhong Shou looked around. A moment later, joy flashed across his face as he walked to the side. Not far away, at the foot of a giant stone, there was a bunch of reddish-brown spiritual herbs. It was about half a person tall, and its leaves were green. The spiritual herbs on Demon Corpse Mountain were all slightly poisonous. Zhong Shou walked close, taking out a leather glove and carefully plucking one. First, he injected in a thread of true qi, followed by a drop of blood on it. When this drop of blood was absorbed, threads of red veins appeared on the leaf. Just by looking at it, he knew that this grass was no different from the meridian spirit grass in his memory. There were hundreds of herbs here, and Zhong Shou identified them one by one, picking out roughly 50 of them. This number was more than enough for him to refine medicine. What was surprising was that at the end of the meridian spirit grass, there were tens of rice-sized, wheat-like flowers. The meridian spirit grass only bore fruit once every 100 years, and the one in his hand was obviously more than 300 years old, which was why it was so strong. As expected, no one cares about it. If it was 10,000 years later, even a 10-year-old meridian spirit grass would be rare. Such a spiritual herb had little use, but it couldn't withstand being plucked. 10,000 years later, wild meridian spirit grass was extremely rare. The ones in his hand, if placed in the future, would be worth at least 10 million. Zhong Shoxin was satisfied as he placed them one by one into the pouch at his waist. Then, he saw that Gong Shinran had unknowingly come to his side, looking over with a bright smile. "You have already picked the meridian spirit grass. Junior brother, are you satisfied?" She flipped her hand and took out 6 talismans. "This is the spirit concealment talisman that I got from my teacher. Each of them can be used for 4 hours and can cover your track. With your help, junior martial brother should be able to return safely." Zhong Shou shook his head, glancing at Gao Yi. Although those thoughts before were just guesses, he suspected that he was measuring the heart of a gentleman with one's own yardstick. After all, although Gao Yi hid his killing intent towards him, he took good care of Gong Shinran from start to finish. However, at the bottom of his heart, he was still a little worried. Taking in a deep breath, Zhong Shou smiled and probed, "Why not junior brother go up with you? Or I can ask Shui to go with you. Anyways, with this talisman, I can walk out myself." "Young master." Before he finished, Chu Shui's brows furrowed as she exclaimed anxiously. Gong Shinran used her fingers to knock on his head. "Nonsense. No matter how good this talisman is, we are still afraid of accident. If no one follows, how can I be at ease?" Zhong Shou smiled bitterly, knowing that his suggestion wouldn't work. Even if he said that he was a martial master and his sword was one with the spirit, it wouldn't help. Not only would he not be able to get past Gong Shinran and Chu Shui, but on Gao Yi's side, his expression was colder and colder, giving off a dangerous glow. Without much hesitation, Zhong Shou took a step back, taking out a stack of talismans that he snatched from Qi Shao. No matter if they were useful or not, he took them all out, stuffing them all into Gong Shinran's hands. "Senior sister, bring these talismans. Anyway, I have no use for them. The mountain is dangerous, and you might be able to use them." Gong Shinran was originally a little hesitant. However, when she saw the seriousness in the eyes of the teen in front of her, she knew that he was right. Thinking about his identity as the Gantian Mountain Prince, he probably didn't lack talismans. She smiled and kept the talisman in her hand into her chest. Chapter 75. Not long after, Gong Shinran, Gao Yi, and the others disappeared from the peak of the mountain under their watchful eyes. Chu Shui reluctantly retracted her gaze, giggling. "Young master's senior sister is a good person. Why don't you marry her?" Zhong Shou didn't know whether to laugh or cry, knocking Chu Shui's head as a form of punishment. Not to mention that Gong Shinran's relationship with Gao Yi was really ambiguous, and he didn't really like her. Even he himself had someone he liked. Subconsciously, an elegant and refined figure flashed through his mind. He shook his head. The one he met in the last life was, after all, a virtual character created by the AI of the future. He didn't know what was going on with her in real life. Speaking of which, he found it amusing. He was such a nerd. He only saw a back view and a dance at the peak of Xing Mountain. He didn't even say a single word and he was already thinking about her. He knew that she was just a virtual character, but he still couldn't forget about her. Chu Shui hugged her head, unhappy with Zhong Shou's violent actions. Why did young master hit me? Did Chu Shui say something wrong? I see that Gao Yi is so weird. Instead of marrying him, Sister Shinran might as well marry the young master. The Dragon Spirit City Gao family is so much weaker than our Gantian mountain. Young master does have a fiancée, but which one of the monster kings in Donglin Cloud Continent doesn't have many wives? Father told me that Jun Shang's lineage is passed down to only one person. When old master was here, he hoped that young master would give him more children, in case he is bullied by those direct bloodlines of the Zhong family. Zhong Shou's lips twitched. It wasn't much if other people said those words. However, when it came out of Chu Shui's mouth, it sounded weird. However, this Gao Yi was really suspicious. Even someone as pure and innocent as Chu Shui felt it. However, this person had been with Gong Shinran for 3 years. With this person's character, what kind of woman couldn't he find? If he didn't like Gong Shinran, why would he do that? Furthermore, at this moment, he couldn't help. He could only hope that Gao Yi's killing intent was only directed at him. Or perhaps, after he obtained that item, he would still be able to make it. His gaze was gloomy as he looked up. Zhong Shou smiled and flicked Chu Shui's brow. If she isn't willing, can we snatch it? Let's go find that lightning phoenix egg. When he said that, he activated the wind-traveling spirit bone and walked to the other side of the demon corpse mountain. Chu Shui thought, so what if I snatch it by force? Could it be that he really had to search for that thunder phoenix egg? It wasn't until he saw Zhong Shou walking further and further away that he hurriedly followed behind. She continued climbing up to 40,000 feet. Zhong Shou's footsteps suddenly stopped, and he suddenly stopped. Zhong Shou, we're here. Following Zhong Shou's line of sight, Chu Shui looked over in shock, only to see a giant and steep mountain wall in front of her eyes. It stretched out from the main body of the Demon Corpse Mountain and stretched out tens of thousands of feet. It was 30,000 feet high and extremely steep. Zhong Shou's gaze slowly revealed a complicated expression. In the next moment, he reached out and hugged Chu Shui before jumping up. His body rose 30 feet, the wind-traveling spirit bone at his waist and legs stretched out a few flying claws, grabbing onto the stone in front of him. Little Gold, which was hidden in his sleeves, had unknowingly arrived on his back. It stretched out 10 tentacles, the ends of which turned into suction cups as it tightly stuck onto the mountain wall. His entire body was like a multi-legged spider, rapidly climbing upwards. Chu Shui felt weird, thinking to herself, how could the lightning phoenix egg be here? However, thinking about how amazing her young master was these few months, she couldn't help but keep quiet. He could only silently urge the dark chill tiger to protect the two of them. Spirit beasts were formed from soul power and didn't have any weight. This was why, although the dark chill tiger didn't have the ability to fly when it was alive, it could still follow closely by their side. After climbing 10,000 feet, just as Little Gold's strength was slowly being used up and it was showing signs of exhaustion, the area in front of the two of them suddenly widened, and they had already reached the peak of the mountain wall. At the highest point, there was a 1,000-foot wide platform. Although it was close to the waist of the Demon Corpse Mountain, there was a giant gully between them. Not only were the beasts unable to come over, but even the beasts in the sky wouldn't bother. Zhong Shou didn't even look around. After putting down Chu Shui, he activated the wind-traveling spirit bone and, with a few leaps, he arrived at the center of the platform. This area was slightly sunken, and it was 100 feet wide hot spring, giving off hot steam. The water that seeped out flowed to the right, forming a waterfall. Chu Shui followed behind and stopped beside Zhong Shou. When the hot spring below entered her eyes, she exclaimed, "How is this a hot spring?" She couldn't help but ask curiously, "Young master, what are you doing here?" Zhong Shou's face was serious, shaking his head and not replying. The bright glow in his eyes flickered uncertainly. In his memory, the spring water here should be cold. This was also the reason why Chushue was so shocked. Below the stone wall, there was a natural water vein, which was why it could gather the water's spiritual energy of heaven and earth. At this moment, since the water was still warm, then the thing inside should still be there. Based on the normal path, this item should have been found by a day-wandering spirit master 10 years later, when the spiritual energy wave started to affect the entire cloud continent. In just half a year, he helped that person's sect develop an ascended ancestor. The later generations of that sect had long since perished, leaving behind only some legends whose authenticity was unknown. In the library that Zhong Shou was in his last life, there was a book that recorded this part of history. He had once explored this place in the illusory realm on a whim. Naturally, there wouldn't be such an item in the game. The only thing he was worried about was whether or not he could use the lightning phoenix egg as he wished. His breathing was slightly heavy. A moment later, Zhong Shou gave out a self-mocking laugh. This item was simply too important to him. He had no choice but to worry about it. Taking in a deep breath, he forcefully pulled Chu Shue's hand and jumped into the hot spring without hesitation. After sinking down 200 feet, Zhong Shou's body suddenly shot up. The pine-pattern wind sword was suddenly unsheathed. Gathering all the strength in his body, he stabbed out to the side. Under the water resistance, Zhong Shou's strength was reduced by 70%. Luckily, the stone wall at the side wasn't firm. The moment the sword tip touched it, it would collapse to the side. As for Zhong Shou and Chu Shui, the two of them were swept in by the surging water. With much difficulty, they stabilized their bodies and floated up to the surface. In front of them was a small cave that was roughly 300 feet wide. The cave was really dark and they couldn't see anything. However, the air was really fresh, so there should be another tunnel that connected to the outside of the cliff. Zhong Shou casually made a hand sign, summoning a fist-sized flame in his palm to light up the cave. Following which, Chu Shui took in a deep cold breath. Her expression was fixed as she looked forward, only to see that in the middle of the cave there was a giant purple egg. It was 5 feet tall, and beside it was the eye of the hot spring. Around it was boiling water. The surface of the eggshell was filled with many weird patterns. It was like the lightning during a thunderstorm. Its path was really special. Chu Shui was startled on the spot. The corner of Zhong Shou's lips curled up. There's no need to guess. This is the lightning phoenix egg. However, 10,000 years have passed, and there is no life within. Even if we get the 10,000 spirit longevity jade, we won't be able to hatch it. It's really the lightning phoenix egg. Chu Shui sucked in a breath of cold air as her eyes widened to their limits. The desolate lightning phoenix was one of the god beasts. Even the descendant, the thunder eagle, who had only inherited 1/10 of his bloodline, was now an incomparably powerful and ferocious bird. It was one of the few protector beasts that spirit masters dreamed of. At this moment, this god-beast egg was placed in front of her. Even if she knew that it couldn't be hatched, it still shocked her. Chapter 76. Zhong Shou was similarly emotional. He was used to seeing all sorts of spiritual treasures in the future. In comparison, although this lightning phoenix egg was precious, it wasn't much. However, that was in the God Emperor game, and he had never seen the true top treasures in real life. His eyes were a little heated as he looked at the giant egg. Zhong Shoxin was impressed. When the lightning phoenix of the desolate era hid its descendant, it was really careful and well hidden. Hiding here, even day-wandering and above spirit masters who could travel the heavens and earth, if they didn't pay attention, they wouldn't be able to notice it. If it wasn't for that alien race expert falling here, the lightning phoenix in the egg would have hatched 3,000 years ago. The heavens didn't want this bird to be born, so he had no regrets in taking it. He took out a medicine bottle from his sleeve. This time he didn't directly apply it. Instead, he took off his outer clothes and used a willow talisman knife to draw many blood marks on his body. He passed the parts of his back that he couldn't reach to Little Gold, who used his mind to control it to carve on his back. It was half a centimeter deep. Threads of blood dripped down from his body. The blood marks seemed to correspond to the meridians in his body, but they didn't. Chu Shue's face was devoid of blood. She wanted to persuade him, but she knew that Zhong Shou was carving a talisman formation on his body. If she disturbed him, she would instead harm her young master. It took a full hour before the outline of the bloody scars could be vaguely seen. Zhong Shou's 4 limbs, chest, and abdomen were in the shape of 4 lightning phoenixes. The tip of its beak gathered in Zhong Shou's energy ocean. It wrapped around Zhong Shou's body and could be split into numerous small talismans and branching talisman formations. There was also a small pattern on his forehead, like a lightning phoenix spreading its wings and flying. Its tail was connected to its body, forming a single entity. Only a thumb-sized blank space was left at the center of his brow. When all the talismans were drawn, Zhong Shou used the hot spring to wash away all the blood on his body. Only then did he take out the medicinal liquid and apply it on the wound. The deep purple color added a layer of strange aura to Zhong Shou's body, and it also made him look gorgeous and beautiful. Not long after, all the wounds turned purple. As for the 4 big and 1 small lightning luan, they became even more lively and lifelike. It was as if it was about to fly away from him in the next moment. Zhong Shou's expression also became more serious. In his memory, the day-wandering realm spirit master spent half a year to refine this lightning phoenix egg into a pill for his disciple to consume. At this moment, it was impossible for him to have such conditions. The only thing he could rely on was the energy-devouring technique. Shue, protect me. If we don't succeed this time, you and Uncle Ian should leave Donglin Cloud Continent as soon as possible. Before Chu Shui could react, Zhong Shou had already walked in front of the giant egg. Hesitating slightly, he suddenly pointed at the top of the eggshell. It felt like it was made of steel, extremely firm. It was also extremely hot, and there were threads of weak electric currents spreading out. However, when Zhong Shou activated the heaven energy devouring conversion technique, the eggshell was softening at a visible speed. In a few breaths, his finger had already stabbed into the egg. In the next moment, a giant purple electric current spurted out. It charged up along Zhong Shou's arm. Along with the sizzling sound, a burning smell spread out from the surface of his skin. It should have instantly blown his body into pieces. However, when it passed through his body, it entered the lightning phoenix talisman formation. Zhong Shou's body trembled. Not only was his entire body numb, but there was also a deep purple electric glow wrapping around his body. At the tip of his finger, balls of pure Xiantian essence energy surged in like a huge river. It was like there was no end to it as it charged into his chakra. A moment later, Zhong Shou was slowly unable to back down. Even if he wanted to stop the heaven energy devouring conversion technique, he couldn't. He could only allow it to surge in and surge in his body. The wounds on his body were swiftly healing. All of the purple lightning was sealed within. Similarly sealed within his body were all the essence of the lightning phoenix egg that he had forcefully absorbed. Chushua was terrified as she watched. Although the initial purple lightning had already faded, she was still shocked. Although the initial purple lightning had faded, those blood scars were becoming more and more vicious, twisting and protruding. It was like there was something twisting and struggling within. She took a step forward and instinctively retreated, not daring to touch it. At this moment, Zhong Shou felt like he was about to explode from the energy currents. He had long forgotten about the intense pain. He only focused on activating the Xiantian essence energy to flow around his chakra meridians. He only hoped that his body wouldn't be blown into pieces. All the acupoints in his marrow meridians were opened up under this strong pressure. The blood and wisdom chakra didn't hold on for long either. The 24 main acupoints and numerous branch acupoints were forcefully opened up. Luckily, a portion of the Xiantian energy seeped into his bones, blood, and brain. It caused his body to slowly improve and strengthen his foundations, until the second chakra meridian couldn't take it and opened up tens of acupoints. Only then did the Xiantian essence energy from within the egg slow down. The energy in his body also turned from maniacal to gentle. Zhong Shou let it to settle in various parts of his body. Although his body was swollen and uncomfortable, he still forced himself to use the qi condensation technique. Along with the 5 phoenix talisman on the surface of his body, he sealed balls of Xiantian true essence in various parts of his body. Each bit of Xiantian true essence was extremely precious. Even if he knew that he was just a step away from death, he didn't dare to waste any of it. A few days ago, he started to cultivate the qi condensation technique just for this moment. He wanted to keep most of the essence energy in his body. The wounds on his body healed one by one. When the 5 purple lightning phoenixes on his body all disappeared and disappeared under his skin, he was shocked. The lightning phoenix essence that was being injected into the egg had finally come to an end. However, Zhong Shou's eyes still had a sharp glow. He knew that the most dangerous and crucial step was at this moment. Just as the Xiantian true essence that was being injected into his body was slowly disappearing, Zhong Shou's index finger suddenly expanded. A congealed ball of energy the size of a pine nut forcefully charged into his body. Everywhere it passed, all the meridians and veins started to tear. It followed his arm and went up. It was originally going down towards the energy ocean, but when it reached his chest, it suddenly split up. A portion of it still sank into the energy ocean and floated there. A portion of it directly entered his mind and drilled into his soul. Outside of his soul ocean, it formed the 13th rune. It was a thunderbolt rune, the same size as the luck rune beside it. Sometimes it looked like the word lightning, and sometimes it looked like the word thunder. Zhong Shou only felt like his head was heavily hammered by someone. He was dizzy for a long while before he slowly came back to his senses. He sat down weakly, but immediately used his saber as a brush to write the word seal in between his eyebrows. It was the size of a thumb and was really mysterious. However, it caused the 5 lightning phoenixes around him to flash once more. Purple lightning danced around his body, and his aura rose. It was like the finishing touch, causing the effects of the entire talisman formation to be different. Before this, there were still threads of purple lightning seeping out. Even the Xiantian true essence was partially seeping out. However, when the talisman formation slowly stabilized, Zhong Shou's aura instantly calmed down. Chapter 77. When all the purple patterns on Zhong Shou's body disappeared once more, the spiritual energy storm within the cave finally started to dissipate. Chu Shui's face was filled with joy. She knew that at this moment Zhong Shou was really fine. Although his aura was locked up, he was no different from a normal person. However, just now, the lightning glow and the surging vital energy was real. The benefits that Zhong Shou received were immeasurable. The direct bloodline descendants of ancient god beasts were often grade 7 and above beasts when they were born. As for the essence of a lightning phoenix egg, it could be imagined just how enormous it was. At this moment, Zhong Shou used his body as a formation to seal it all within his body, not allowing a single bit to leak out. Zhong Shou's actions could be said to be a brilliant idea. Using a human as a pill was unimaginable. However, based on her common sense, if Zhong Shou wanted to absorb the essence of the lightning phoenix egg, He should have drunk all the egg juice. Unexpectedly, he just used a finger to reach in. It was much more direct and quick. The Sciention essence energy he absorbed was much more complete. Like last time at the black soil swamp, he directly swallowed the essence energy within the beast crystal. Who knows how Zhong Shou did it? At this moment, Zhong Shou was observing his own body. Bone, blood, intelligence, 3 chakras have been opened. Zhong chakra 24 acupoints have been forcefully opened. Let's hope that my foundations aren't too damaged. He only felt that his bones, blood, flesh, skin, and even his internal organs were being stripped from his body and were about to burst open. However, he had suffered such pain every day and was already used to it, so he didn't care much about it. 10 times the pain and 100 times the pain didn't have much of a difference. It also exceeded the limits of what his mind could take. With his strong will, he could barely suppress it. At this moment, observing the situation in his body, it was slightly out of his expectations. Not only did the worst situation not occur, but he was exceptionally lucky. My bones are as hard as steel. My vital energy is 10 times stronger than normal people. My wisdom wheel has also been cultivated, and my soul power has multiplied. Although the pain in his head was like being pricked by needles. However, Zhong Shou clearly felt that his thinking ability was almost twice as good as before. Refining the wisdom chakra would strengthen one's vital energy and blood, and it would directly affect one's soul. The whirlpool in the Sea of Soul had expanded by more than 4 times in a short period of time. Part of it was because he had absorbed some Sciention essence qi, and part of it was because his own qi and blood had strengthened, which was an indirect effect. As for the density of his bones, it had also increased by nearly 2-fold. Whether it was his blood, flesh, skin, or internal organs, they were all slightly improved. That day, Ardent Sword Wu Wei had his lancet knife pierced through his eye socket, but he was still fine. He only felt dizzy for a moment because of the bone refining technique. At this moment, Zhong Shou was the same. In fact, he was even better. Even if someone slashed him with a saber, he was still fine. There are indeed many benefits to having a stable foundation and a stable foundation. If not for that, he would have died here today. I can be considered to have stepped into the mythic master realm. Although my foundation is unstable, it can still be salvaged. Paying such a small price is worth it. His thoughts at the back were filled with bitterness. Today, in order to absorb the Thunder Phoenix egg, how could the price he paid be described with the word little? Unless there was a day when he could totally absorb the essence of the Lightning Phoenix egg. If not, the tearing pain in his body would never disappear. Furthermore, because he had to suppress the various powers in his body, he could only use 40% of his strength. Even if the vital energy of his body was much stronger, it couldn't compare to same-grade martial cultivators. At this moment, Zhong Shou's body was like a human-shaped pill. In his last life, after the day Wandering Realm Spirit Master obtained the Lightning Phoenix egg, he refined the essence within into a total of 49 Phoenix pills. Pretty much each pill could allow a mythic master to raise a grade after consuming it, entering the Sciention realm. Of course, there were many other spiritual medicines added to it, but from this, one could imagine how rich the Yuan Qi inside was. In the future, just absorbing all the solidifying Sciention essence energy in his body was enough to give him a headache. There was also the lightning power of the phoenix hidden under the ceiling formation, which was also a problem. As long as he was careless, he would still end up in a miserable state. One lightning phoenix egg can allow a small sect to produce talents, pretty much comparable to those 19 spiritual houses. Now that the essence of the lightning phoenix is all gathered in my body, who knows how long it will take me to absorb it? Mocking himself in his heart, Zhong Shou didn't feel dejected at all. Instead, he was delighted, feeling unprecedentedly relaxed. Coming to this world 10,000 years ago, Pretty much every day was filled with caution. Under such heavy pressure, even if he was an ascended realm expert in his last life, the head of the 7 god emperors, Sword Emperor Tanchio, he had to be wary. He was afraid that in the next moment he would lose his life in the hands of those Xiantian realm experts. He had a body of ability but couldn't use it. He would be unable to reach the top, the end of the martial path. It wasn't until today that he obtained the complete egg of the ancient god beast did he have the ability to survive the huge waves in the future. Using the body as a pill, although there were many uncertainties and problems. However, compared to the precarious situation in the past, it was a problem that belonged to a happy person and wasn't much. In the end, he was reaping what he sowed. However, Zhong Shou was willing to take the risk of his body breaking apart to seal up all the Xiantian essence energy. A large reason was to plan for the future. The obstacle that Lingyun Longrua mentioned that day was definitely not lower than a dual meridian body. The more he prepared now, the more confident he would be in breaking through in the future. Actually, at the bottom of his heart, he had roughly guessed a few things. There were only a few possibilities. Unfortunately, although there are a few treasures in my memory that I can get my hands on. However, the only thing that can explain its background and not attract suspicion is this lightning phoenix egg. To get those few things in my hands, I have to think of a way in the future. He remembered that day in Cloud Saint City. To convince Yin Yang, he had spent a lot of effort. He bought countless books and used them as references. Only then did he manage to make Yin Yang believe him and let Chuxue follow him into Blood Valley to give it a try. However, his actions were more because he didn't want people to suspect him. In the end, his strength was too weak. If he had the strength of his last life, so what if others knew that he took over? Naturally, it was also because of Zhong Shou's dying wish. He also couldn't bear to hurt Yin Yang and Chu Shui, who had accompanied him for many months. Anyways, names didn't matter to him. He didn't mind using the name of Zhong Shou to spread his might in the world. His intent sunk into his soul ocean, quietly looking at the swelling whirlpool and those 13 runes. It was still clear and transparent with very little impurities. The Xiantian essence energy obtained from the lightning phoenix egg was originally the purest. He didn't even need the energy leading technique and little gold to convert and merge it into his true qi and soul power. At this moment, the amount of soul power in his soul ocean had exceeded that of the soul observing realm. The so-called spirit cultivation realm is where a spirit master develops spiritual sense to strengthen one's control of heaven and earth spiritual energy, allowing one's soul to be connected to the spirit. I have enough soul power now, but if I use spells, there is a barrier. Although the 12 god talismans had been nourishing him for a month, allowing his soul power to sweep up the spiritual energy within 100 feet of him and even merge it with it, the time was too short, and the effects weren't as good. Although the essence of the lightning phoenix egg could increase his soul power, it couldn't cause his soul to be connected to the spirit in a day. Suddenly, he felt a weird movement above his head. When Zhong Shou came back to his senses, he saw that little gold, who was hiding on his head, was jumping and jumping up and down. Chapter 78. He used strength to grab little gold down from his head. However, the little thing in his hand continued to struggle. A sense of anxiousness and desire spread out from it. Zhong Shou laughed involuntarily, knowing that this fellow was eyeing the lightning phoenix egg. Although he had absorbed the essence within into his body, the egg was still intact. However, the eggshell was still completely undamaged. Apart from that, there was still some juice left, which could be compared to the highest quality spirit pellet. If you want to eat it, then eat it. It was yours in the first place. For you to be able to enter this time, you have done well. Casually slashing with a sword, he broke the purple eggshell. Then, he tossed little gold's body forward and it landed on the eggshell shards. With a burst of cracking sounds, the shattered shell of the Thunder Phoenix egg began to disappear bit by bit into Xiao Jin's stomach from that crack. There were no other protector beasts here. The dark chill tiger was only left with its soul, so he could only give it to this little fellow. In the next moment, he saw Chu Shui open her eyes wide as she looked over curiously. "Young master, are you okay? The situation just now was so scary. Have you already broken through to the 7th meridian of the bodily chakra realm? Oh right, how did you know that the lightning phoenix egg would be here?" A series of questions were tossed over, not afraid that he would miss out. Zhong Shou shook his head, smashing a fist onto the mountain rock beside him, causing the entire area to shake slightly, causing rocks to fly everywhere. This fist had 3,000 kilograms of strength, barely crossing the threshold of a mythic master. His bones were firm, his flesh and blood strong, even stronger than rocks. The skin on his right fist was also unharmed. As for the intense pain when he used his strength, he directly ignored it. The only weird thing was that when he punched out, there was a purple lightning glow around his arm. It caused his fist speed to become much faster and much heavier. What was the reason for this? Samuraim's eyes shone brightly, seeing that Chu Shui was still staring at him, not relaxing at all. He could only helplessly split his attention to explain. "I am just guessing. Lightning birds like cold places when they lay eggs. I think that the lightning phoenix's situation is similar. Within this blood valley, only this natural water vein can form cold springs." Zhong Shou looked at the spring again. Although the lightning phoenix egg had been absorbed by him, it was still boiling as before, so that the small cave was filled with water vapor. Chu Shui was slightly relieved, but there was still some doubt in her eyes. He muttered, "But I've also heard that thunder and fire coexist. Therefore, during the desolate era, the lightning Luan always liked to stay with the fire phoenix." Before he finished speaking, Zhong Shou suddenly took out the pine-pattern wind sword and silently dug up the mud beside him. He dug down about 10 feet or so. A few strands of red light shone out from within, dyeing the entire cave red. Even Xiao Jin, who had been gnawing on the lightning phoenix's eggshell with all its might, shrank back as if it was frightened. Chu Shui looked over and saw a red fireball the size of a longan lying quietly in the soil. It was less than 3 feet away from the spring. It caused the cold spring water to become unbearably hot. Luckily, this was why the surrounding soil layer didn't totally melt. "This is the blazing glass pearl?" Chu Shui's pupils constricted. After all, she was a spirit master and knew how precious this item was. This was a material that exceeded spiritual artifacts and could be used to craft Xian treasures. It could even be treated as a Xian treasure itself. In a day, she had seen 2 rare treasures. No matter how dumb Chu Shui was, at this moment she was stunned. There are so few fire veins in this blood valley, but the water veins are gathered in hot springs. Isn't that suspicious? That's why I said to read more books. Zhong Shou laughed, using the pine-pattern wind sword to fill up the soil that he had dug up. In his heart, he was filled with respect for the day-wandering realm spirit master who found this item. The words that he said to Yin Yang that day weren't made up. The clues that he found from the ancient books were real. That day-wandering realm spirit master did find clues from numerous ancient books to deduce where the lightning phoenix laid its eggs. In the end, 10 years later, he was able to find the lightning phoenix egg in such a secluded place and strengthen the sect. Unfortunately, he didn't have enough stamina and was limited by his talent, unable to improve further. In the end, not only was he unable to make the sect enter the 19 spiritual houses when the spiritual wave was at its peak, but he also caused the sect to be wiped out. The reason why the sect was wiped out was because of the blazing glass pearl in his hands, as well as the remaining half of the Luan pill. Chu Shui came back to her senses with much difficulty. Looking at Zhong Shou's actions, she couldn't help but be startled. Young master, this blazing glass pearl is a treasure, why are you burying it? Although the treasure is good, it isn't as important as your life. Haven't you heard that treasures cause trouble? Shwe, if you have a way to bring it away without anyone noticing, then I'll dig it out. Smiling slightly, Zhong Shou's hands didn't stop, filling in the soil layer and burying tens of water element beast crystals, forming a small ceiling spiritual formation. When Zhong Shou activated a seal, a blue light flashed below, sealing the remaining flame energy aura. Anyways, there were still 10 years until the spiritual wave started. It wouldn't be too late to take this item out a few years later. Following which, he didn't bother about Chu Shui, who was frowning in thought, entering deep thought once more. Before this, when he was observing his soul ocean, there were still some weird situations within which he didn't investigate. This made him curious and worried. In just a moment, Zhong Shou's intent once again descended in his soul, outside of that giant whirlpool. 13 runes were circling outside of his soul ocean. However, the most complete one wasn't the luck rune, but the lightning word. It was constantly changing, apart from lightning and lightning. Sometimes, it would even transform into a bird shape. Its body was deep purple, lightning wrapped around it, looking really beautiful. Its size was also expanding, directly absorbing the Xiantian essence energy in his body to strengthen it. Before this, when it entered his body, it was about the same size as the luck rune. Now it was 3 times the size of the latter. Luckily, this swelling trend was slowly slowing down. However, this lightning rune was slowly getting close to the whirlpool. It was actually showing signs of merging into it. Is this rune the true mental core of the desolate lightning phoenix? Zhong Shou only felt a sense of loss. After all, in his last life, he was only a martial cultivator. His understanding of spirit masters was really limited. At this moment, he didn't know how to deal with it. Hesitating for a moment, he saw that the rune was already close to the center of the whirlpool, his mental source. Only then did Zhong Shou helplessly use a thread of his intent to wrap over and try to come into contact with the rune. He wanted to use his intent to control it and let it return to its original position. However, the moment it got close, an explosion spread out in his ear. Zhong Shou only felt his consciousness go blank, lightning flashing. His soul was light, like it had broken away from some kind of restriction. When he came back to his senses, he saw that he was actually flying in the clouds. In front of him was an empty space. Below him was Blood Valley and Demon Corpse Mountain. Am I in the air now? How is this possible? For a martial cultivator to step in the air, one has to be at least at the ascended realm. Could it be that he was dreaming? But why does this scene seem so real? Shaking his head, Zhong Shou seemed to have thought about something. In an instant, his heart almost stopped. Since he wasn't truly stepping in the air, then there was only one possibility for the situation in front of him. His divine soul was currently roaming the vast sky. Looking down, as expected, he couldn't see his body. However, he saw many feathers formed from soul power and a pair of sharp claws. At the sides of his body, a pair of purple wings spread out, lightning wrapped around them. Chapter 79. Looking at his body, Zhong Shou was stunned for a moment before he finally understood. So my soul has turned into a lightning phoenix. No wonder I was able to charge out of the cave and fly 100,000 feet. His wings flapped and lightning flashed, only to see the scenery in front of him fly backward. In the blink of an eye, he traveled 100,000 feet. He only felt that he was free, unrestrained, and extremely carefree. At the start, Zhong Shou was still unfamiliar with it. After circling a few times in the sky, he slowly became familiar with it. Flapping his wings, he became more and more free as he glided in the air. However, a moment later, the happiness in his chest suddenly disappeared without a trace. A chill struck his heart, only to feel that his entire body was ice cold. Currently, he was only at the spirit cultivation realm. At most, his soul was a little more refined. The few times he went out of his body, he used the power of the sandalwood and the spiritual formation. His soul was unable to be connected to the spirit and control spiritual energy to protect his soul. The moment he left his body too far away, just the baleful wind in the air was enough to shatter his soul. Not to mention the blazing sun and sun essence flames in the day. Only after his soul returned to the sun and reached the day-wandering realm would he not need to fear them. Those evil spirits in the world would burn upon contact with light. As for the soul of a human, in terms of its essence, it was the same. His heart filled with shock, Zhong Shou once again observed his surroundings. Moments later, he finally calmed down. Although it was night time, the sun essence flames were still blazing. Near this demon corpse mountain, the mountain wind was blowing. However, at this moment, he had turned into a lightning phoenix, threads of purple lightning wrapped around his body. However, for some reason, not only was the sun and sun essence flames unable to touch his body, even the vast mountain wind was unable to seep in. Could it be that my current state is because of that talisman in my soul sea? Transforming into this form, I am actually not restricted by the mountain wind and sun. He didn't understand and shook his head. Zhong Shou tried to control the nearby water vapor and sand. However, he could only curl up a grain of rice, the rest of it didn't move. The surrounding spiritual energy also didn't change much. Only wisps of lightning gathered around him, making the purple lightning around him even denser. With another dive, the sharp claws under its abdomen slashed out. He actually forcefully grabbed a tree branch that was over 100 feet long and as thick as a person's thigh and lifted it into the air. His body only swayed slightly before he regained his balance. He didn't find it strenuous at all. As a Thunder Luan, I actually have a strength of 2,500 kilograms. It's only slightly inferior to my physical body. If he didn't use the shape of the Luan, how strong would he be? It's definitely not as good as this. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind in an instant. Zhong Shou also felt that his body was gradually becoming tired, and he was thinking about returning home. Following which his heart moved as he thought back to Gong Xinran, who he had just separated from not long ago. I wonder how Gong Xinran is doing? That Gao Yi always made her worry. With my current form, it's a good opportunity for me to take a look. Although it was said not long ago, it had actually taken him half a day to absorb the essence of the lightning phoenix egg and seal it into his body. His senior sister, no matter whether or not she found the items left behind by her ancestor, was probably on her way down the mountain. Demon Corpse Mountain was the safest during the day. However, once it reached night time, especially at midnight, it was truly a land of death. A thought flashed across his mind as Zhong Shou's wings flapped once more, and he suddenly charged towards the waist of the Demon Corpse Mountain. The moment he got close, he felt a strong mental energy interfering with his soul. It caused his consciousness to go into a daze, and the lightning phoenix shape nearly dissipated. However, in the next moment, Zhong Shou scoffed coldly. A strong will that had been buried deep inside his god's soul suddenly burst out. It actually clashed with this mental energy, not at a disadvantage at all as it chased it out of his consciousness. He knew that this was the spiritual sense left behind by the alien race expert who had fallen. It was also the reason why all the Xiantian and out-of-body cultivators and spirit masters didn't dare to get close. Zhong Shou didn't hesitate at all, his body flapping as he continued to charge into the Demon Corpse Mountain. After a few glides, he found the tracks of Gong Xinran and the others. Zhong Shou's consciousness felt his heart sink. Along the way, he didn't see any signs of beasts. However, he saw blood marks one after another. Specks of blood landed on the ground, bright red in color. The blood is still warm, it should have been done not long ago. His wings flapped once more, and his body nimbly sped around the giant mountain. In the next moment, the few people in front of him appeared in front of him. Zhong Shou's eyes that were formed from soul power were filled with shock at that moment. Below them, the lively and cheerful Gong Shinran, who had been full of life half a day ago, was now firmly pinned to a beautiful peach tree by a shining sword. Her face was ashen white, only her chest was still rising and falling. Her eyes, which should have been filled with water, were now filled with death energy. Her eyes weren't filled with pain, fear, or despair. They were filled with pain and despair as she looked in front of her. Beside the peach tree there were a few people. It was Gao Yi and the 6 mythic masters. The former had a weird smile on his face as he played with an item in his hand. As for the others, they all looked on with pity, mockery, or disdain. Lightning exploded around Zhong Shou's body as he spread his wings once more and charged down. Just as he got close, Gao Yi waved his hand and slapped Gong Shinran's face. At the same time, he laughed. Are you regretting it? Do you think that I am heartless? Then, do you know that I spent a full 2 years by your side because of this thing? 2 years, just to accompany you, this ugly girl, and to please you. Do you know how tired I am? Zhong Shou's eyes sharpened once more. He only felt rage surge into his heart. Just as he was about to pounce down, he suddenly felt an incomparably deep exhaustion. The lightning around him dissipated by a large amount, slowly becoming undetectable. Luckily, at this moment, the last bit of sunlight had disappeared. Although there was wind around him, it was still unable to get close. However, Zhong Shou had no energy left and could only silently land on a tree branch. Then, he used all his strength to absorb the spiritual energy around him to try and recover his energy. Who knows if it was because Zhong Shou was careful or because of the remnant intent of the ancient desolate race top martial cultivator on Demon Corpse Mountain. Gao Yi didn't notice anything, shaking his head expressionlessly. If you want to hate, hate yourself. You obviously know that you are ugly and have no talent. What makes you think that I, Gao Yi, will really like you? What makes you think that you can marry into the Gao family and become the future mistress of the Gao family? Gong Shinran tilted her head to the side. Her hair was in a mess, covering her ashen white face such that one couldn't see her expression. Gao Yi seemed to find it boring, shaking his head slightly. Forget it. After all, you and I have been together for 2 years. I can't go overboard. Since I have already obtained the martial secrets written by the 3 saints, I have no reason to make things difficult for you. When Zhong Shou looked carefully, he realized that in this person's hand was a book made of golden silk. It was 4 fingers thick and was extremely heavy. After Gao Yi smiled, he was about to turn around when he suddenly thought of something and stopped in his tracks. I nearly forgot. At that time, I swore to you that in the future, the 2 of us would be together forever, in life and death. Chapter 80. Gong Shinran originally didn't make a sound. Only at this moment did her deathly still body move slightly. Gao Yi's smile became more and more devilish. What should I do? I don't want to be a person who doesn't keep his words. Oh right, I forgot that I still have this rare artifact with me. Shinran, you have read tens of thousands of books in Linhai College. Do you know the artifact crafting techniques of the demon spirit sect during the Desolate Era? Injecting the vengeful spirits of people into the artifact and turning it into a mystical image demon, one can craft the artifact into a spirit. My 7 celestial hoop is just lacking a sky demon. With your situation, you're the perfect material for the job. You are a spirit master and your soul power is really strong. You also hate me to the bone, making me unable to let go even if I wanted to. Being the artifact spirit of this item, and following by my side, wouldn't it mean that I won't leave you forever? When her voice sounded out, Gong Shinran's body had quietened down once more. Zhong Shou's chest was also expressionless. He wasn't angry as he looked on quietly from the side. Only the coldness in his eyes was as sharp as a blade. Just as Gao Yi was speaking, he suddenly heard a whistle from outside the mountain. Surprise appeared in his eyes, so Senior Mi came. He is a Xiantian, so why did he take the risk to come to the foot of Demon Corpse Mountain? Muttering with doubt, Gao Yi casually took out a bracelet from his sleeve. He tossed it to the side to Qi Nu. This woman has some feelings with me, so it isn't good for me to do it myself. Qi Nu, you learned some soul-binding techniques in the past. Later, help me bind her soul and bring her down the mountain. If anything goes wrong, I won't let you off easily. That voice was cold, freezing one's bone marrow. Then, he laughed. If you are willing, you can torture her. Although her looks are a little bad, her body is not bad. I know that the few of you have secretly cultivated the absorption technique, so you can use it as you wish. The more painful and furious she is, the stronger the quality of the mystical image demon will be. What happens to my 7 celestial hoop in the future will depend on all of you. However, you must remember to come down before midnight. The eyes of Qi Nu and the others lit up. His gaze towards Gong Shinran was also a little weird. Zhong Shou, on the other hand, stopped at the top of the tree and looked coldly at Gao Yi, who was walking away. Then, with a flap of its wings, it flew up again. Lightning flashed, and in one breath, Shao Chun traveled 30 kilometers. He returned to the cave and approached his body. That feeling of exhaustion and powerlessness had already disappeared without a trace. However, he still rushed into the divine firmament's body and allowed his consciousness to return to his body. When he opened his eyes, Zhong Shou clenched his fist and punched the ground. That huge force actually smashed the mountain rocks below into smithereens. Zhong Shou's anger subsided a little. Taking advantage of the momentum, he leaped up and ran out like lightning. Shao Jin, who was still gnawing on the Thunder Phoenix egg, was suddenly at a loss. After a slight hesitation, he crushed the remaining eggshell into pieces. Using its body to wrap it up, it jumped onto the shoulder of Zhong Shou. Chu Shui didn't know what was going on. She could only use her flying technique to follow closely behind. However, the more she followed, the more shocked she was. She didn't know why, but the aura around Zhong Shou's body was much more shocking than those grade 6 beasts she had seen before. In her impression, not only was Zhao Yanran far from him, but even Lei Dong was slightly weaker. It wasn't that his aura wasn't as strong, but that dangerous aura made one's heart feel cold. Like a fierce snake that had just woken up from hibernation, giving off a fierce intent to swallow people up. It made one uncontrollably feel fear in their hearts. At the start, Zhong Shou still used the wind-traveling spiritual bone to walk. A moment later, he felt impatient and tossed it aside. He fully extended his body and suddenly stepped forward. Lightning flashed under his feet. His body brought about a whistling sound, like lightning as he directly crossed the giant gully between the cliffs, sprinting through the dense forest of this Demon Corpse Mountain. The vital energy in his chest surged. The energy in his dual meridians were also slightly bursting. The Xiantian true essence that had stabilized exploded once more. Even the bones in his body gave out cracking sounds under such extreme speed. Zhong Shou acted like he didn't hear anything, his eyes as cold as a cold spring. There were no other thoughts in his mind. His feet didn't stop, only knowing how to increase his speed and increase his speed. Chu Shui, who was behind him, was stunned once more. Zhong Shou, who she was slowly catching up to, had actually left her dozens of body lengths behind in just an instant. It was like a crazy wind howling in the forest. Her entire body was startled on the spot. She had only seen this kind of speed from those martial ancestor realm experts. Zhao Yanran, who fought with Zhong Shou that day, was already unbelievably fast. However, compared to Zhong Shou, she wasn't even worth a mention. What kind of light body technique was this, to be so tyrannical? following which these doubts were tossed aside. There was only one thought in Chu Shui's mind. What made Zhong Shou so furious? In these few months, even if he was humiliated by Liang Miaozi at the peak of Pill Spirit Mountain, even if he was forced by Zhao Yanran to fight with her in the sword, Zhong Shou had always been calm and unhurried. She had never seen a young master like this before. They walked straight up the steep mountain for 40,000 feet. Normally, it would take at least a few hours. However, Zhong Shou used just a few minutes to rush to that devilish peach forest. His clothes were all drenched in sweat. His stamina was nearly all used up. His leg bones were broken in several places. His chest and abdomen were filled with internal energy. His internal injuries were heavy. Even the wind-traveling spiritual bone on his body was totally destroyed. Zhong Shou was too lazy to bother, slightly panting as he moved forwards. He could laugh as he looked at the life and death of others, but he could also kill people to climb to the peak of the martial path. Even if his hands were dyed in blood and he killed numerous people, he didn't care. However, this time he couldn't not do anything. He could only hope that he was still able to make it in time. Forcefully taking over 10 steps forward, the scenes that he had seen in the body of the lightning phoenix appeared in front of his eyes once more. Gong Shinran was still pinned to that peach tree. Qi Nu was at the side drawing the talisman formation. The other few people were still looking on from the side. However, at this moment they all looked over in shock. Zhong Shou only felt his mind relax. His body was about to fall to the ground. In the next moment, he forcefully supported himself and slowly walked in the direction of the few of them. Qi Nu was at a loss when he saw that, then he shook his head. Isn't this the Gantian mountain prince? He actually hasn't come down the mountain till now. Has he been following behind? Let me guess, does Prince Zong like this girl? Rushing over so hurriedly to save her? Gong Shinran also raised her head and looked over in a daze. The consciousness in her eyes slowly came back. Slowly, it was filled with panic and anxiousness, also containing a little bit of blame. She said weakly, "Junior brother, what are you doing here? Go back. You are the Gantian mountain prince, they won't dare to make things difficult for you. Listen to senior sister, you haven't opened your chakra meridians and your soul ocean, so you can't do anything to them. Go back." Qi Nu broke out into a laugh. "That won't do. If we didn't know the situation, we could let him leave. However, since we bumped into him, then we need young Master Yi to personally deal with him. Although the Gantian Mountain Monster King has most likely fallen, this prince's identity is special, and we have to be careful." Gong Shinran was startled. Then Qi Nu laughed evilly. "Oh right, if you really like her, I can grant you your wish. Actually, the few of us aren't interested in this girl." As he said that, he suddenly stopped. Only Zhong Shou was expressionlessly looking over. His ice-cold eyes were filled with mockery at this moment. His beautiful face was filled with a wildness and unruliness that he had never seen before. He only felt a body flash in front of his eyes. Then, he felt an iron-like hand suddenly grab onto his neck. He clenched his fist, and a large amount of red liquid instantly shot out. Chapter 81. Qi Nu felt like he was suffocating, only feeling that the huge strength on his neck was about to break his neck bone. His entire body was unable to use any strength, and he couldn't even struggle. He could only look on in fear at this half-monster teen who used one hand to grab his neck. There was a faintly discernible smile on that peerlessly beautiful face, but it was incomparably eerie and cold, without any warmth at all. Reflected in his eyes, he felt a chill down his spine, and he was terrified. The people around were also startled as they looked at Zhong Shou, only feeling that it was really preposterous. That feeling was like looking at a rabbit that didn't even know how to bite suddenly turned into a deadly primordial god. Before this, he was panting like he was about to fall down at any moment. Even now, he had no aura around him. He was even weaker than those normal people who had opened up some chakra meridians. However, just now, in the blink of an eye, a body flashed, a lightning glow flashed, and Chi Nu was killed on the spot. At this moment, although he wasn't dead, his throat and arteries were all smashed. Blood gushed out, and there was pretty much no chance of him surviving. That series of actions was so quick that they couldn't see it clearly. Gong Shinran was totally distracted, not daring to believe what was happening in front of her eyes. Not long ago, Chi Nu was still filled with killing intent, casually teasing the two of them. However, in the blink of an eye, Zhongshou, who was supposed to have no strength to truss up a chicken, grabbed his neck and was already on the verge of death? His hand suddenly exerted strength, only to hear a crisp, cracking sound as Chi Nu's neck was totally broken. It also totally cut off this person's last chance of survival. Zhongshou casually tossed aside the head in his hand that was still dripping blood. He took in a deep breath, temporarily suppressing the boiling killing intent and the rage and hatred in his body. Following which, he didn't bother about the other people not far away, moving his feet with difficulty to the front of the blossoming peach tree. First, he stuck a few needles near Gong Shinran's wound. Only after all the arteries and veins had constricted did he manage to pull out the sword that was nailed between her chest and abdomen. Not much blood gushed out, but Zhongshou's eyes dimmed. His lungs were heavily injured, and his spleen was shattered. Unless it was one of those legendary golden pills that could bring the dead back to life, only then would it be possible to save this girl's life. The only thing he could do now was to prolong his life. Previously, he ran as fast as he could, but in the end, he was still a step too late. Gong Shinran, on the other hand, was very open-minded. Not only did she not feel despair, she even smiled at him comfortingly. His body trembled slightly as if he was feeling cold. Zhongshou continued to insert a few more golden needles into Gong Shinran's body, causing her spirit to slightly recover. Then, he silently took off his coat and covered the girl's body. Then, he could no longer suppress the viciousness that had gathered in his chest and rushed into his brain. Once the killing intent appeared, he immediately sensed the aura. The gazes of the 5 people behind him, who were fully focused and on guard, suddenly turned sharp. Like a raccoon with its hair standing on end, it pounced on Chu Yang with its vigorous body. "Go and die!" Amidst the tiger's roar, a few shadows of weapons flew out from the front and back. A fist wind was in the middle. Before the body even arrived, it caused a thunderous explosion. This strike was actually afraid that he wouldn't die. It was overbearing and didn't give him any chance at all. Zhongshou gave out a self-mocking laugh. He originally thought that with his heart realm, even if the heavens collapsed and the earth cracked, he would be able to remain calm. However, when the matter came to a head, he couldn't help but be shaken. Even if he tossed aside those 13 years of Zhongshou, all his memories and emotions, at this moment, he was still unable to remain calm. This violent intent that had accumulated in his chest hadn't appeared in a long time. He wanted to see blood. He wanted to kill. He also wanted to totally wipe out this bunch of animals. However, he still didn't move, stabbing a golden needle into Gong Shinran's forehead, until the blade light and sword attack behind him reached him. Only then did a sharp glow explode out from Zhongshou's eyes. He waved his sleeves and 2 willow talisman knives slid out from his sleeves. 6 God defensive knife. When the knife came out, it would end one's life. The green-colored knife shadow in the air passed through the heavy blade veil in an impossibly short amount of time. It accurately pierced into the throats of the 2 mythic masters on the right. His right hand pulled out the sword, his entire body exploding with lightning once more. His body flashed to the side as he retreated. When he turned around, it was instantly a heavy sword waterfall. In just an instant it covered 100 feet in front of him. Blood splattered, the sword light dissipated. When everything returned to silence, Zhong Shou was already standing 200 feet away. Everywhere he passed, there was a trail of blood and flesh. There were also two people who held their throats and knelt on the ground. Blood flowed out from their fingers like a fountain. The life force in their eyes slowly dimmed. Only the only person who used fists was still perfectly fine. However, there were over 10 sword wounds on his body. His face was ashen white as he stood rooted to the spot. Just now, he had personally seen the two companions beside him have their throats slit by the willow talisman knife. As for the other two, they were slashed into pieces by the maniacal blade light that the teen raised up. In that instant, who knows how many swords he slashed out, unbelievably fast. It also minced the two complete human bodies into countless pieces of minced meat. He had been through hundreds of battles in his life, but he had never felt so powerless like today. The opponents he faced were Xiantian experts, but none of them made him feel fear from the bottom of his heart like this half-monster teen. Gong Xinran was startled once more, looking at Zhong Shou with a foreign gaze. Was this really the shy and self-inferior junior brother of hers in the college? The one that the teachers said had a dual meridian body and wouldn't have any achievements in his life. The one who was bullied was the Gantian mountain prince. Was he really the person in front of her, giving off such a terrifying aura? When he came, he looked really tired, but he killed Qi Nu so easily. In less than 2 breaths, 4 of the 5 mythic masters died, and 1 was injured. They died in such a tragic manner that one couldn't bear to look at it. It was as if he didn't use any energy at all. Each and every action of his would affect one's heart. Zhong Shou waved his sword, shaking off the flesh and blood on it. He felt a little better, but his thoughts weren't clear. That fierce and violent intent was so thick that it was about to turn into a physical form, turning into a blade and stabbing out from his chest. When he looked at the girl under the peach tree, the last bit of joy in his eyes disappeared without a trace. Seeing the last mythic master crazily running down the mountain, Zhang Xian's eyes lit up. Zhong Shou's lips couldn't help but curl up coldly, showing disdain. His left index finger moved slightly, and another willow talisman knife pierced through the air. A few months ago, as a martial warrior, he was able to heavily injure Wu Wei with one knife. Now, the knife naturally wouldn't miss. After the knife shot out, Zhong Shou was too lazy to take another look, walking back to the peach tree. As expected, just as he took a step, he heard a piercing sound. It was the crisp sound of the talisman knife stabbing into the throat. Then, with a hong, a person's body smashed into the ground, causing dust and sand to fill the air. Zhong Shou sighed slightly, walking in front of Gong Xinran. Hesitating for a moment, he said bitterly, "Does senior sister have any last wishes?" Chapter 82. Zhong Shou sighed slightly and walked in front of Gong Xinran. After hesitating for a moment, he finally opened his mouth bitterly. "What last wishes do you have?" Gong Xinran was startled and then broke out into a laugh. "Just now, I actually hoped that junior brother would have a way to save me. Golden needles to my acupoints to prolong my life. I wasn't injured at all, but you killed 6 people. I nearly thought that junior brother was invincible. However, that's great. I remember that 3 years ago, junior brother personally told me that one day you would surpass your father and become a top expert. Let all those who once despised and looked down on you see you in a new light. I originally thought that junior brother had given up. I didn't expect that you would have already done it. Those senior brothers from the same period as you, there probably isn't a single one who can compare to you." Zhong Shou was slightly startled, looking back at the memories in his mind. Then, he shook his head. He didn't expect that Zhong Shou would have such a childish moment. His face couldn't help but blush. Even though the one who said those words wasn't the real him. In the eyes of others, it might not be the case. Gong Xinran seemed a little tired, taking in a deep breath before opening her mouth once more. However, her expression was so calm that it made one's heart hurt. Speaking of last wishes, can junior brother take back that book of martial secrets? Senior sister actually doesn't hate Gao Yi. What he said is right. The reason why I died today is because of my wishful thinking. I had eyes but failed to see, that's why I believed him. Only that book of martial secrets concerns the legacy of our Gong family and is really important to my junior brother. It can't fall into my hand. As she said that, Gong Shinran's eyes moved slightly, revealing a pleading expression. I know that this request is a little too much. I also know that junior brother won't be able to do it now. I only hope that in the future, when junior brother has the ability and the time to think about me, you can help me take it back. Zhong Shou listened on quietly and suddenly felt something. He looked coldly to the right, only to see the bushes and trees there shake intensely. Shortly after, he saw Chu Shue panting as she walked out. Looking at the situation in front of him, as well as the dying Gong Shinran, he subconsciously froze. Then, her pretty face froze slightly as she stood quietly to the side. Even though they didn't know what had happened earlier, they didn't dare to interrupt the conversation. For a full 10 breaths, Zhong Shou didn't reply. A bitter expression slowly appeared on Gong Shinran's face. In the next moment, Zhong Shou suddenly opened his mouth. Is it enough just to get back the essentials of martial arts? Senior sister, you don't want to see Gao Yi die in front of you. Gong Shinran was already in despair, but when she heard this, she was immediately startled. He looked over in disbelief. A moment later, her brows furrowed. I'm not afraid that you won't be able to kill him. However, Gao Yi has already left the mountain. From his tone, I could tell that there were a lot of reinforcements below. There might even be Xiantian realm experts. Junior brother, even if you are strong, you don't have to fight head-on with him now. Zhong Shou didn't bother about her, walking in front of a corpse nearby. Jumping up, he took out an iron bow in his hand. He casually pulled it. The bowstring was really tight and it was really tough. He increased the strength to around 3,000 kilograms before pulling it open. With his current strength, he wasn't even able to pull the bow fully. Zhong Shou carried the bow on his back in satisfaction, taking out the quiver. There were a total of 20 arrows that this person had never used before. They were all made from the bones of the cloud whale and were really light. They were inlaid with the teeth of the golden tiger and carved with blood grooves. The tip of the arrow shone with a cold light, extremely sharp. He weighed them one by one, and after he had an idea, he tied them to his waist. He walked down the mountain in large strides. Shui, carry her over. Be careful, don't touch those needles. Chu Shui wanted to ask what was going on, but she also wanted to say that young master looked like he would fall from a gust of wind. After running for so long, he should have fallen to the ground from exhaustion, so why did he still want to show off? However, she didn't dare to be careless. He hurriedly walked over and carefully picked Gong Shinran up. Only when she got close did she realize how badly she was injured. Her blood was pretty much all drained. It was a miracle that she was able to live until now. Zhong Shou walked down a few steps, as expected. He felt out of breath and couldn't take it anymore. He tried to activate the wind-traveling spiritual bone under his body, only then did he realize that this item had been broken by him running. His brows instinctively frowned. Suddenly, he saw a blood-red glow appear in front of him. At first glance, it looked like 2 red lanterns. Looking closely, he realized that it was a giant lion that was 20 feet tall. He was eyeing them like a tiger eyeing its prey. Its body was really strong, its muscles were tight, and its eyes were filled with a bloodthirsty and fierce intent. From afar, he could smell a fishy smell. It's a grade 3 sickle-tail lion. Chu Shui was stunned on the spot, her arms nearly unable to hold on. She quickly sniffed her body, and as expected, the scent of the medicine had turned faint. There was nothing on Gong Shinran's body. She couldn't help but be filled with a bitter taste. Although the sickle-tail lion in front of her was only grade 3, its aura was really unstable. Suddenly, it surged up and gathered large amounts of spiritual energy. Suddenly, it was so low that it couldn't be sensed. The situation was actually similar to Yin Yang a few days ago. It had reached the peak of its grade and was about to break through. Who knows if her dark chill tiger could block it? Zhong Shou broke out into a laugh. Then, his eyes turned blood-red. Before this, when he was talking to Gong Shinran, all the rage, and killing intent that he suppressed all gushed out. His thoughts were fleeting, filled with madness. Before this, he was still worrying about how to get down the mountain. However, in the blink of an eye, he found a means of transportation. That sickle-tail lion seemed to have sensed danger. It actually didn't advance and instead retreated. It roared out in a threatening manner and took half a step back. In the next moment, a purple glow shone in front of his eyes. Zhong Shou's body turned into a ball of light that couldn't be seen clearly and appeared in front of the hook-tail lion. Before the giant lion was able to react, a heavy fist smashed into the side of its head. Pung! A loud explosion. A full 1,500 kilograms of strength struck the weakest part behind its ear, causing the sickle-tail lion to tilt its head. It felt dizzy and dazed, following which another fist mercilessly struck its chin, causing blood to spurt out from its nose and mouth. The consecutive blows caused it to nearly lose its mind. He crazily hammered the head of the giant lion. Only when the thoughts in his heart calmed down did Zhong Shou stab his sword into the top of its head. It pierced through the skull and stopped when it was close to the brain. Zhong Shou jumped up and stood on the back of the sickle-tail lion. Waving his hand, he thought to himself that the lion's bones were really tough, beating all mythic masters of the same grade. Even after absorbing the essence of the lightning phoenix and strengthening his bones, he was still far from it. In just a dozen fists, his bones nearly broke. Seeing Chu Shui still in a daze, Zhong Shou couldn't help but frown. "What are you standing there for? Why aren't you coming up?" Chu Shui only felt her throat dry up. Along with Gong Shinran, she looked at the man and beast in front of her in a daze. Was Zhong Shou really planning to ride this sickle-tail lion down the mountain? Chapter 83. That hook-tail lion had also recovered from its fainting state. The blood in its eyes had mysteriously disappeared. It first shook its head, and when its consciousness finally understood the situation it was in, it subconsciously twisted its body, trying to struggle and shake off the person on its body. The giant side-shaped tail waved and swept upwards. Zhong Shou was unfazed, only shaking his head and saying, "Naughty." Then, his left hand grabbed the pine-pattern wind sword and shook it. It caused the giant lion to cry out in pain, 90% of its strength instantly gone. Only at this moment did it realize that it was so close to death. The long sword on its head was just half a centimeter away from its brain. If it stabbed forward slightly, it would pierce through its skull. Zhong Shou's right sleeve shone with a cold light. He held a black willow leaf talisman knife between his fingers and silently swung it to the side, creating a series of flashing arcs of light. Following which, blood spurted out, and that sickle-like lion tail was tossed upwards. Chu Shui's pupils couldn't help but constrict once more. The eyesight of the tiger-cat race was also far superior to normal people. At this moment, she personally saw the knife stab into the softest part of the lion's tail, and then cut into the gap between the vertebrae. From start to finish, Zhong Shou didn't use much strength. Using the sharpness of the talisman knife, he sliced the iron whip-like sickle-like tail into two. That hook-tail lion cried out once more, like it was in extreme pain. Zhong Shou still didn't let it go. He stepped down, causing the hook-tail lion's back to spurt out blood and flesh. His entire spine, which was over 100 feet long, instantly shook violently from head to tail. It gave out a cracking sound that didn't stop for a long time. When Chu Shui and Gong Shinran came back to their senses, they saw that the peak grade 3 beast was lying on the ground. Its eyes were twisted in pain, but it didn't have the strength to roar out. At this moment, it was even more obedient than a cat. It was incomparably tame. Chu Shui's entire body suddenly shivered. She carefully looked at her young master. At this moment there was a faint smile on her exquisite face, but it inexplicably made people feel that it was cold and cruel. His eyes seemed calm, but they seemed to contain a murderous intent that was even more ferocious and crazier than those ferocious beasts. For a moment, he forgot to react, until he saw that the purple-red eyes were slightly impatient. Only then did he come back to his senses and jump up, hugging Gong Shinran and jumping onto the huge lion's back. Only then did Zong Shou smile in satisfaction and kick his feet. The giant lion immediately kept quiet out of fear. Its intelligence was also somewhat intelligent, and it knew what Zong Shou meant. He quickly got up, let out a lion's roar, and ran down the mountain with all his might. His speed was like a gust of wind, not much slower than when Zong Shou went up the mountain. However, due to the rise and fall of the mountain, the hook-tail lion's back was also extremely bumpy. Zong Shou's 2 legs were like they had grown roots, standing firmly on the lion's head. One hand holding the giant bow, the other pressing on the quiver. A purple lightning glow flashed in his eyes. Even if he killed 6 people, he still couldn't feel satisfied. He still had nowhere to vent his violent thoughts. Hearing Gong Shinran's wishes, he felt even more furious. Who knows what the person at the foot of the mountain had prepared? Zong Shou, the Sword Emperor Tanqiu from 10,000 years in the future, was here to kill. When Gao Yi came down from Demon Corpse Mountain, he saw 10 over cavalry quietly waiting 1,000 feet away at the foot of the mountain. Their mounts were all carefully selected cloud stepping foals, and they were extremely strong. Even if they were carrying 1,000 kilograms, they could still do it easily. 10 of them wore iron armor and carried large knives. They gave off a strong aura, and they didn't move at all. However, Gao Yi's eyes turned to the front of the group right away. There were 2 Windrider foals, which were rarely seen in the Cloud Continent. One of them was empty, while the other had an old man sitting on it. He only had a sword on him, but his aura was even stronger than the 10 soldiers behind him added together. At this moment, he was sitting there leisurely, looking into the distance. Gao Yi smiled when he saw that, and his body suddenly floated up. In just 10 breaths, he crossed 1,000 feet and landed gracefully on the Windrider foal. This foal seemed to have been infected by the demon god intent of Demon Corpse Mountain, and its eyes were slightly red. When Gao Yi landed, it suddenly stood up, and its actions were fierce and wild. Gao Yi didn't panic, and he pointed at the back of the foal's head. A talisman flashed on his fingertip, and instantly the foal regained its calmness. He smiled towards the person beside him. Why did Mr. Me personally come to the foot of Demon Corpse Mountain? This Blood Valley Demon Corpse Mountain is really famous. You are a Xiantian expert, so please don't let anything happen to you. As long as I don't step into the mountain, some mental disturbances won't be a problem for me. The old man with the surname Mi explained expressionlessly, laughing coldly. Although my strength is suppressed, who here can do anything to me? Only those Xiantian masters with weak wills would fear this place like a tiger. As for you, have you brought the item? How is that Gong Shinran? He turned his head, and a bright glow shone in his eyes. Naturally, I got it. Gao Yi smiled and took out a thick and heavy golden book. He smiled and said, however, I would like to ask Mr. Me to allow me to make a copy first before I present this book to you. As for that woman, I really like her, and I want her to accompany me for the rest of my life. That old man didn't care, and when he heard the last sentence, he burst out laughing. So you are prepared to refine her into your 7 spirit rings? You are really vicious, and you didn't waste the old master's trust in you. Gao Yi didn't care, smiling. Our Gao family is new, so how can we stand up if we aren't vicious? That woman wasted 2 years of my time, and I spent so much effort to get rid of her suspicions. How infuriating. I only feel a little weird. There are no less than 1,000 books of martial secrets in the world. If you want it, you can easily get it. Why do you have to spend so much effort on this one? When the old man with the surname Mi heard that, he didn't comment, taking out a jade bottle and throwing it to Gao Yi. This is the reward you want. The old master personally picked the 9 heavens essence, Shengshan Ji Lotus, and refined it into a high-grade human pinnacle pill. There are only 49 of them, and even I was given one in my early years. Today is your good fortune. As for the martial scripture, it isn't something you can know about. Gao Yi was delighted, and after receiving it, he carefully hid the jade bottle in his sleeves. Legend has it that this item can make all cultivators below the Earth Chakra realm who haven't entered the Xiantian realm consume it, greatly increasing their strength. Changing bones and tendons, strengthening the soul and body, it can save 10 years of training. It really makes one's heart itch. Oh right, when I entered the Blood Valley, I met a person, the Gantian Mountain Prince Zong Shou. I don't know if there will be any problems. Gantian Mountain Prince. The expression of the old man with the surname Mi was originally expressionless, like he couldn't raise his spirits. Only when he heard those words did his expression change slightly. Thinking about it for a moment, he calmed down. Forget it. There is no need to make so many strong enemies. If we let him die on his own, he won't be able to live for long. If this person dies in the hands of people from Gantian Mountain, it's okay. If someone else dies, no matter which side it is, they will go all out to take revenge for him. Recently, for some reason, he has been connected to the Cloud Saint City Lord. What's funny is that the few powers west of the Cloud Continent all want to kill him, but they don't dare to make a move. Gao Yi knew what was going on, laughing coldly. That piece of trash who can't even open his chakra meridians. After we kill him and throw him into the beast horde, who will know that it was us who did it? P.S. The new week has started to be forcefully promoted. This is the last week before entering V, and it is really important for us to explore new land. Once again, I beg everyone to give us some recommendation tickets. There was once a great country that was humble and tolerant, but was mocked by the international community as an evil little rabbit. 5,000 years of civilization and wisdom gave birth to a genius, but before he even showed his talent, he followed the legendary Steve Jobs and died. On the other side of the starry sky, my friends who transmigrated, have you missed Earth and your motherland? Congratulations, your organization has one more member, Yao Tong. Since you have already transmigrated, why do you need to hide? Your life is beautiful and exciting, to cherish each day. Who knows whether or not the sun will rise tomorrow? I also recommend a book, Peerless Demon Child, by Thick Cucumber. Before this, he was taking care of his son, dragging down his progress. Book ID equals 217-7911, book name equals Peerless Demon Child. Chapter 84. Gao Yi knew what was going on and laughed coldly. That piece of trash who can't even open up his chakra meridians. After we kill him and throw him into the beast horde, who would know that we did it? His words were filled with curiosity, but he was still a little worried. He didn't care much about that piece of trash, but killing him would cause a bunch of problems. Tossing this matter aside, Gao Yi said regretfully, "Forget it, let's do as old me says. It's a pity that the maid by his side, I like her very much. It's rare for a member of the Ocelot clan to be so beautiful." Even I was a little moved. Although I have dozens of beautiful concubines, they can't compare to her pure beauty. Her strength is also not bad. If my 7-spirit ring can have her as the main spirit, it will be much stronger than Gong Shinran. Who knows if there will be a chance in the future? Old Me laughed involuntarily and didn't reply. He signaled behind him, and the 10 cavalry behind him started to gallop forward in an orderly manner. Looking at the old man beside him, he also urged his horse forward. Gao Yi was startled, waving the reins and chasing up, asking curiously, "Mr. Me, why are you doing this? I still have a few subordinates who haven't come down. My 7 spirit ring. We aren't waiting anymore." Old Me shook his head, his expression becoming more serious. "Cloud Saint City has someone who wants to meet you. Speaking of which, it has something to do with the Gantian Mountain Prince. It will be of great benefit to you." Gao Yi's brows furrowed, hesitating slightly before following behind the old man. He smiled. "So Mr. Me came in for this matter. Who has such face to invite you? Forget it, I can accompany you. However, if this matter is delayed and you aren't able to turn Gong Shinran into a wonderful fragrance demon, you will have to compensate me." Just as he was joking, a lion roar spread out from the demon corpse mountain behind him. It came from afar and swiftly charged over. When he heard it, it was 10,000 feet away, but in just a moment it was behind him. Not only Gao Yi, but even Old Me was slightly stunned. He turned his head and looked back, only to see a giant sickle-tail lion charging out of the dense forest in the mountains and chasing behind. It was 20 feet tall and had a huge body. On it stood 2 people. A 13-year-old teen stood on the head of the tiger. The other was a pretty girl of the same age, holding a person in her arms. Gao Yi was extremely familiar with that face, but he was even more shocked. Only when Old Man Me looked over with a questioning look did he frown and say, "This person is Zhong Shou." The girl behind him was his maidservant. What was wrong with her? Are you here to seek death? Countless questions surged in his heart. Why isn't Gong Shinran dead yet? Where were Qi Nu and the other 5? Why would this scythe-tail lion listen to him? Could it be a spirit master's guardian spirit beast? Just based on this elite beast, did it want to take revenge on him? It was like a moth flying into a flame. The giant lion at the back seemed to have gone crazy. Its speed was even faster than the Windrider foals that the 2 of them were sitting on. Vast amounts of heaven and earth spiritual energy crazily poured into it. The more he sprinted, the faster he became. He even vaguely touched the brow of the 4th level. Old Me also didn't understand. A moment later, he coldly laughed. "I didn't want to have anything to do with this kid, but since this ignorant brat wants to die, then I'll just let him die." He casually waved his hand and signaled to the side. The 10 horsemen all turned their horses around and sped away. With a sharp clang, they all pulled out their knives and swords like one person. They looked forward expressionlessly like tigers and wolves, extremely valiant and filled with killing intent. The aura of the scythe-tail lion instantly stopped. It caused the spiritual energy that gathered around to suddenly dissipate. Chu Shui's pupils constricted. She grabbed onto Zhong Shou's shirt. "Young master, that person is really a Xiantian." Gong Shinran, who was in her arms, couldn't help but clench her fist. Her face was filled with fear once more. Zhong Shou was unfazed, coldly raising the bow in front of him. Caressing the bowstring, his heart was filled with emotions. How long had he not used this bow? In his last life, he didn't use it in real life. In the virtual world, he only used it occasionally before he obtained the 6-god defensive knife technique. Although this bow technique wasn't much compared to his flying knife, it was still slightly famous. Who knows if he could find the feeling of the past? The arrow was placed on the bowstring. Before he pulled it fully, he suddenly shot out. The arrow whistled and was 1,000 feet away in front of the 1st cavalry. A cold glow appeared in the eyes of the cavalry on the horse as he slashed out with his knife. The knife attack was decisive and was about to slice the tiger-tooth arrow into half. However, the arrow directly pierced through the knife light and stabbed into the neck of the cloud-stepping foal. The horse whinnied and fell forward. Along with the cavalry on it, it also fell forward. Sheng! Sheng! zheng. The sound of arrows whistling through the air was endless. In just a breath, numerous bowstring sounds could be heard. The few cloud-stepping foals at the front were all shot in the neck by the same arrow. All of a sudden, they fell off their horses. The few cavalry at the back were also blocked. They could only slow down and go around from the side. However, in the next moment, they saw a few more arrows striking over. The few of them were prepared, casually waving their hands and slashing apart the tiger-tooth arrows that struck over. However, a moment later, their eyes opened wide in rage as they looked at the arrows that followed closely behind. 2 arrows. 3 arrows. When the arrows came, they suddenly went down and suddenly went up. They were unbelievably quick. The few people on the horses were either hit in the eye or in the neck. In just a dozen breaths, another 4 people fell off the back of the horses. When the 20 tiger-tooth arrows in the quiver were all used up, there were only a few left. Only 2 iron-armored knights were left. They were still in a daze, as if they could not believe what had happened in the blink of an eye. At this moment, Chu Shui had just summoned the dark chill tiger once more. Before she was able to order it forward, her eyes were stunned as she looked at the scene. 10 fully armed 7 Meridian mythic masters in iron armor. In just a blink of an eye, half of them died. A mere 20 tiger-wolf arrows had taken the lives of 5 people without missing a single arrow. Her young master's archery was so strong. It was so unreasonable that it didn't make sense. Gao Yi's eyes were wide open as he looked behind him. Not long ago, he didn't care about him and saw him as trash, even wanting to snatch his maid. His body instinctively shivered. Although the teen standing on the lion's head was cold and expressionless. However, for some reason, Xiao Chen felt a berserk and tyrannical aura mixed with a murderous intent spreading out. That pair of cold eyes was like a sharp blade, causing his body to feel a bone-piercing chill. Even the old man beside him tensed up, his expression serious. What a chain of arrows! After looking at it for a while, Old Me let out a sigh of relief, muttering in disbelief. To be able to draw a 3,000-pound bow, he must be at least a mythic master at the 7th meridian of the bodily chakra realm. In 10 breaths of time, he shot 20 arrows without missing a single one. This teen's archery skills are really terrifying. Are those people from Gantian Mountain crazy? Are the spirit masters of Linhai College all blind? Even in my sect, this prince can be a direct disciple. Who dares to say that such a genius is trash? Gao Yi's face instantly turned ashen white. Not long ago, he was one of those people who had eyes but couldn't see. Chapter 85. Such a genius, who dares to say he's trash? Gao Yi's face instantly turned ashen white. Not long ago, he was one of those people who had eyes but couldn't see. In Donglin Cloud Continent, as long as one was a martial master, they would be proficient in archery and horse riding. However, 1 in 10,000 had such exquisite archery skills like Zhong Shou. Out of 10 million people, one wouldn't be able to find one. To be able to draw the bow 20 times within 10 breaths, he definitely wasn't trash with no strength like he had imagined. A 13-year-old 7 Meridian mythic master, no matter where he was, it was enough to shock everyone. Why did this person spend so much effort to hide his strength? Was he really the dual meridian body of the legends? What was laughable was that he didn't find anything weird before. Such scheming, such talent, if he waited for this kid to grow up, wouldn't he be amazing? He couldn't help but be shocked and panicked, killing intent rising in his heart. He turned around to look at Old Me, only to see him think about it seriously before shaking his head. The matter has already gotten out of hand and can't be covered up. Let's talk about it in the future. This kid might have some ability, but killing him is still like killing a dog. This kid hid his strength, but he couldn't take it. Naturally, there are people who can't tolerate him. He actually whipped the Windrider foal and sped up. Gao Yi's expression sunk, coldly looking behind him. He scoffed, filled with killing intent, and followed closely behind. He scolded himself. He thought that he was calm and collected, but today he nearly lost his cool because of this person who was about to die. Suddenly, a lion roar sounded out from behind him. The scythe-tail lion's whiskers flared up in anger. The 10 knights who were filled with killing intent just now instantly melted like ice. Instantly, its aura rose up, like a lion relying on its master's strength. The spiritual energy that had dissipated suddenly gathered back together, roaring out furiously. It shocked the few cloud-stepping foals that could still stand, causing them to neigh in panic. Following which, it leaped up, directly jumping over the bodies of those foals that had fallen to the ground. It also left the remaining 2 cavalry behind. However, at this moment, the 2 Windrider foals in front had already sped up. Be it Gao Yi or that Xiantian master, they didn't have any intentions of turning around to fight. They directly left the few remaining cavalry behind and swiftly ran into the distance. The speed of the scythe-tailed lion was still far inferior, but its explosive power was slightly stronger. His injuries were not light, and he had already run for several thousand feet, so he was clearly exhausted. In just a short moment, the distance between the 2 grew further and further apart. Gong Shinran heaved a sigh of relief. She didn't know if she felt relieved or regretful. Staring at Gao Yi's back view, she only felt waves of dizziness enter her brain. Chu Shui also felt an inexplicable sense of annoyance and depression, but at the same time she also felt slightly relieved. Not being able to kill Gao Yi was indeed a pity. However, not having to face that Xiantian martial master made her feel relieved. Zhong Shou, on the other hand, was expressionless. Lightning flashed in his eyes. That blood-red intent, which contained the violence and craziness within, didn't fade away. Instead, it became even thicker. Suddenly, he raised his eyebrows and looked forward. He saw Gao Yi, who was riding his Windrider foal into the distance, with a cold sneer on his face. He looked over from afar with killing intent. The 2 horsemen who were shaken off slowly caught up. Even the mythic masters whose mounts were killed and fell off stood up and chased after him. Seeing that the 2 of them were about to disappear from his field of vision, the 2 horsemen behind were less than 100 feet away from him. Zhong Shou's chest was surprisingly cold. He didn't feel unwilling or depressed. However, the killing intent in his chest was unprecedentedly strong. It boiled and boiled in his heart, making him unable to breathe. Chu Shui sighed, forming a hand seal to order the dark chill tiger beside her to go forward. She pressed her hand on the sword by her waist and was about to jump down from the back of the lion. Suddenly, she heard Zhong Shou laugh. His voice was really cold, like it was filled with endless coldness. It was also filled with decisiveness and unruliness. Shui, it's up to you. Help me take care of my body. If I don't get rid of Gao Yi, I won't be able to be at ease. Young master, your body, Chu Shui was startled. Before she could react, she felt the yin energy within 100 feet increase. Zhong Shou's body suddenly went soft. She hurriedly reached out to support him. She could see a green mist rise up from Zhong Shou's head. She could hear Zhong Shou's voice by her ear. It was also really cold, killing intent charging into the heavens. It stopped by her ear like a huge bell, like thunder. I can forgive tens of thousands of people, but not this person. When his voice landed, she heard a clear ring. Within Zhong Shou's sleeves, numerous willowmark knives flew up along with the green smoke and left his body. The pine-pattern wind sword that was stabbed into the head of the hook-tail lion was forcefully pulled up by a power and flew into the air. The sound of the sword whistling instantly shook the entire wilderness. Not only the few knights behind him, but they were also slightly shocked. Even old Manmi and Gao Yi, who were several hundred feet away, turned their heads to look back in astonishment. When they saw the green smoke rise up, old Mi couldn't help but exclaim, "Not only did this kid open up 7 meridians, but he is also a dual cultivator. Gao Yi was also shocked, nearly speechless. A moment later, he laughed in disdain. He's pretty much crazy. A person who is only at the spirit cultivation realm actually dares to go out of his mind? Isn't he afraid of being killed by the wind? Before he finished speaking, he stopped abruptly, only to see that the ball of smoke was about to dissipate. Suddenly, a purple lightning net shone, wrapping the ball of smoke within, gathering into a ball and not being affected by the wind at all. In the next moment, a ball of green-white moonlight shone in the air. It caused Gao Yi's eyes to open wide, and old Mi's expression to turn serious. The sword light was like the moon, flashing slightly. The heads of the two cavalry who had chased to the side of the hook-tail lion were tossed high into the air. 2 streaks of blood surged out. In just an instant, their heads were cut off with one sword. Where the sword light shone, the life force and essence energy of the 2 mythic masters were swallowed up. Their corpses also instantly turned ashen white. At this moment, Zhong Shou could only feel a tearing pain in his soul. The feeling of using the heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique with his soul body was different. Along with the essence energy being injected from the tip of the sword, the remnant intents of the 2 mythic masters also followed and charged over. It caused his mind to be filled with random thoughts, and he was close to not being able to maintain his soul. A moment later, he was able to forcefully expel them. Within his spiritual sense, there was only a thread of extremely blazing killing intent. The Yin soul surged, causing the pine-pattern wind sword to suddenly turn, charging into the distance with unparalleled speed. 10,000 feet in a breath, in the blink of an eye, it was already in front of the 2 of them. Subconsciously, Gao Yi leaned back. His mind was unknowingly attracted by that sharp sword aura. All of a sudden, he was unable to raise any thoughts of resisting. Old Mi at the side had already calmed down, scoffing coldly. You have a little skill and dare to be arrogant in front of me. At the spirit cultivation realm, you actually dare to use your soul to control a sword. It seems like I can't hold back even if I want to. Come down. Chapter 86. When his words landed, the shriveled body suddenly shook in all directions. He didn't seem to do anything, but his body went from silence to movement. His body was like an arrow as he jumped up from the back of the horse. His 5 fingers stretched out like an eagle's claw. A ball of green flames burned on it as he grabbed towards the air. It was like he had unlimited firepower, causing the grass below to spontaneously combust without any fire. His body was like that of a cheetah, so quick that one couldn't see it. A breath ago, he was like a dying old man, but a breath later, he was a ferocious martial artist who was still at the peak of his strength. The flames exploded, and Gao Yi's heart shook slightly as he struggled out of the sword attack. In that instant, he found it amusing. Did this Gantian mountain prince really think that he could win against a Xiantian master? Although he was a dual cultivator, his strength was strong and his talent was 1 in a million. However, this person's mind was really confusing. Logically speaking, such a person shouldn't do such a stupid thing. Or did he really love Gong Shinran to the bone? Thinking about that, Gao Yi's lips couldn't help but curl up. He wasn't a shallow person, but at this moment, he couldn't help but feel delighted. Su Chuxue and Gong Shinran, who were behind him, couldn't help but feel their hearts tighten. Chu Shui had to split her attention to protect Zhong Shou's body. Gong Shinran's eyes didn't shift as she looked at that ball of green fire and that ball of sword shadow. In the dark night, within that ball of light, 3 knife lights flashed. 2 black and 1 green, 2 in front and 1 behind. From behind the sword body, Zhong Shou's soul shot out. That old man Mi didn't care, squinting his eyes as his steel-like hands casually grabbed out. Such a talisman knife was something that martial cultivators needed to be wary of. However, in his eyes, it was just a joke, something that he could casually crush. A spirit cultivation realm spirit master was as weak as an ant. However, in the next moment, shock appeared in the old man's eyes. That knife shadow was illusionary, and in his eyes, it split into 8. Its trajectory was also erratic, causing people to be completely unable to grasp its trajectory. His 2 hands grabbed at empty air. There were still 6 saber shadows flying over. Cloud light transformation? With a cry of surprise, Old Man Me's body in the air suddenly sank, falling towards the ground at full speed. However, when his body touched the ground with much difficulty, the 6 saber shadows followed closely behind. Unable to dodge in time, the old man's expression turned cold. With a thunderous roar, he concealed his true power, causing the blade light to disappear. 2 large hands reached out and caught the 2 black flying knives in the nick of time. Just as he was about to crush it, Old Man Me's body trembled once more and blood flowed out from his mouth. Both of his palms were also cut open, leaving a line of blood. Soaring cloud sex cloud shocking god-destroying sword will. How is that possible? The aura in his body was in a mess, clashing endlessly. The old man's face was filled with disbelief. How could this inconspicuous talisman saber have sword intent attached to it? In the next moment, a few streaks of green blade light appeared in front of his eyes. Old Man Me's pupils constricted, unable to raise his strength to dodge. His body retreated once more, retreating 100 feet until the aura in his body calmed down. He was able to discern the true path of the saber shadows. Only then did he reach out and grab 3 feet in front of him. However, this time, he still missed. The path of the talisman saber actually changed once more. It flew down diagonally, stabbing between his chest and abdomen. This is an imperial artifact. No, the flying knife changed direction? Before this, although the old man was shocked, he was still able to maintain some calmness. However, at this moment, he was truly shocked. His upper body twisted, moving to the side at the last moment to avoid his vital organs being hit. He only allowed the green flying knife to pierce his left abdomen. His eyes opened wide, rage surging as he looked up into the sky. "Kid, you actually dare to injure me!" Endless killing intent surged out. Just as he was about to rise into the air once more to kill that soul, the old man suddenly froze. The old man's figure suddenly froze on the spot. His pupils suddenly widened, and the shock that had disappeared not long ago filled his mind once again. Only to see that the green sword shadow was actually flying down from a short distance away. Within the green smoke formed by Zhong Shou's soul, there seemed to be a pair of cold eyes looking down coldly. What made him terrified was that on the pine pattern wind sword, there was a martial path intent that was several times stronger than that of the talisman saber. The sword's shadow was just falling down, but it had a soul-stirring charm to it. This sword didn't have any aura, but it was cold and elegant. It was like the moonlight on water, but it also seemed illusory. It was silent as it pierced through. Even his speed was so fast that it was simply inconceivable. It was like it was a part of the night itself. When Old Me saw it, the tip of the sword was already in front of his eyes, not even an inch away from him. This time, the old man's face was filled with shock. He roared out like a wild beast on the verge of death. He didn't care about his vital energy and the injury on his abdomen. He retreated once more, the green flames around his body exploding as he used all his strength to punch out at the sword shadow. Only to see that the green pine pattern wind sword once again exploded out with a bright light. Then, the entire sword body seemed to turn into a light that the naked eye couldn't see, directly piercing through his throat. A stab and a pull caused the old man's head to fly high into the air. His eyes were wide open as he looked at the headless body below him in disbelief. His eyes were filled with astonishment. How did this happen? How did this happen? He, a 2 Meridian Sciention expert, actually died in the hands of a spirit cultivation realm spirit master? Where did this Gantian mountain prince learn the flying knife technique from? Why did the cloud-shocking god-destroying sword intent of the Lingyun sect appear in his hands? And that sword just now, using his soul to drive the sword, how could it have such a terrifying charm? No, that martial path intent had definitely exceeded the sword intent level. Which expert was this half-monster teen that reincarnated into the human world? At this moment, the Bloodgorge wasteland was completely silent, and there wasn't a single sound. The sickle-tail lion had already stopped in its tracks, its eyes wide open as it watched this scene. Chu Shui and Gong Shinran, who were standing on top, were even more stunned. Did that Sciention master really die just like that? To die under Zhong Shou's sword? The few remaining martial masters behind were also stunned. They looked at the head in the distance and the rain of blood. He didn't move at all. He couldn't believe his eyes. On the other hand, Gao Yi, who was in front, was pale. His face was devoid of blood, and his eyes were unfocused. He only knew that he was riding on the back of the horse, allowing the Windrider foal to bring him along. Previously, the old man surnamed me was forced into a desperate situation by Zhong Shou's 3 talisman knives. This had already caused him to be shocked. Then, he saw old me's head being sliced off by that moonlight-like sword. His heart felt like it was heavily slashed by someone, only feeling empty. The aura in his chest rose and fell like a wave. How did this Mr. Me die? With such strong strength, how did he die in the hands of this kid? When he came back to his senses, his face was instantly filled with fear. At this moment, an unprecedented regret finally filled his chest. Chapter 87. Just as everyone was stunned, Zhong Shou's sword didn't stop at all. Heaven-swallowing energy conversion. When the green sword swept across the old man's neck, it took away a few threads of the Sciention master's essence energy. It was less than 1/10 of the total, but it was still terrifyingly vast. The remnant intent of the old man was 10 times stronger than that of the 2 mythic masters. Zhong Shoxin scoffed coldly, forcefully wiping out these thoughts, and the sword rose into the air once more. After a spin, it swept down towards the distance. Gao Yi's face was ashen white, but he still slashed back with his sword, driving the Windrider foal to flee for its life. Zhong Shou didn't care at all, the essence energy that he had absorbed exploding out. He directly used a strong attacking aura, stabbing down with sword after sword at full speed. It turned into thousands of sword blades, like a waterfall hanging upside down, a giant wave crashing down. When the clanging sounds of swords rang out, the light of blood scattered, and blood and flesh flew everywhere. He directly sliced the Windrider foal into half with one sword. Then, the sword flashed once more. Gao Yi's 4 limbs were all sliced off at the roots, and he fell to the ground. Then, the sword changed directions once more, jumping high into the air, as quick as lightning, 10,000 feet in an instant. With a flash, it split the head of another soldier who was preparing to flee into 2. Then, the sword flashed once more, only a few streaks of light could be seen in the night sky. Thousands of feet away, another mythic master's head also floated up, and he fell to the ground without a sound. As for the remaining 2 people, they were currently entangled with the dark chill tiger. In their panic, they were unable to extricate themselves from the battle. Zhong Shou's soul felt a piercing pain, the purple lightning around him was already extremely dim, and his soul power was about to dissipate. He knew that he had reached his limit, and even if he could swallow the essence energy, he wouldn't be able to continue. He was too lazy to bother, directly returning to his body. He turned into a ball of smoke and entered through his body. When his soul returned and his body recovered, Zhong Shou immediately felt dizzy. He was on the verge of collapsing. Not only was his mind weak, His entire body felt like it was being pricked by needles. All the energy in his body had been used up. Within his soul ocean, numerous impurities were mixed in. At this moment, it was extremely dirty. Zhong Shoshi knew that this was the price he had to pay to kill the Xiantian martial master by using the astral devouring art. He had to cleanse his soul and restore it to its original purity. It would take at least 2 months. Within these 2 months, not only would he be unable to bring his soul out of his body, his soul power cultivation would also regress. In fact, it wasn't just his soul. After continuously drawing the bow 20 times, his arm was still slightly trembling and some of his bones and tendons were almost completely torn. He was afraid that in the next half a month, it would be difficult for him to exert any strength. However, he didn't care about it at all. Instead, his thoughts were carefree, and the viciousness in his chest was completely vented. When he opened his eyes, he saw Chushua lowering her head and looking at him like a dumb goose. Gong Shinran at the side was the same, her eyes in a daze. She didn't know what to say. Killing that mythic master made her feel like she was dreaming. At this moment, even the Xiantian martial master, who she couldn't win against, was killed with one sword. He actually did what he said, promising to make Gao Yi die in front of her. He really didn't care about anything, not caring if he had to fight that Xiantian martial master to kill him. Not only did he have many secret techniques, but he was also so sharp and decisive, making one fearful. She remembered that this junior brother, who was seen as a piece of trash in the school, wasn't even at the age of dancing. His heart was filled with a myriad of emotions. The child who could only cry secretly after being bullied by others had now become such a powerful martial artist. She also thought about how if she had stayed by this teen's side 2 years ago, if she hadn't been charmed by Gao Yi's gentleness and aristocratic aura, what would have happened now? Thinking about that, Gong Shinran couldn't help but scold herself for being too shameless. All of a sudden, Gong Shinran couldn't be bothered about Gao Yi, who had personally pushed her into the abyss. In her eyes there was only this teen, whose face was ashen white like paper. Her heart was numb, and all sorts of thoughts rose up. Zhong Shou didn't feel anything, barely moving his lips as he forced himself to sit up. Then, his face suddenly turned white. His gaze was fixed on Gong Shinran's left chest. The golden needle that sealed her life meridian, the last thread of life, was showing signs of loosening. Suddenly sighing, Zhong Shou struggled to get up, and then floated down from the back of the hook-tail lion. At this moment, he only felt that his entire body couldn't even move a finger. He was so tired that he wanted to die, and he wanted to faint in the next moment. However, no matter how tough and tiring it was, there was one thing that he had to do before he fainted. He took out a pill and threw it into his mouth. When the medicinal effects of this snow spirit pill spread out, the piercing pain in his soul was reduced by half. Within his soul ocean, it was as cold as a cold spring. He moved with all his strength and walked in front of Gao Yi, who had been turned into a human stick, only to see that this person's eyes were spitting fire, filled with endless rage and hatred as he looked over. Zhong Shou laughed, taking out a bracelet in his hand. In the next moment, one could see that Gao Yi's eyes were filled with fear. His face was ashen white as he shook his head furiously, his body twisting and turning as he tried to crawl away. 7 Spirit Ring? What do you want to do? No. I don't want to be that carefree mystical demon. Zhong Shou, I beg you, kill me. Zhong Shou didn't care at all. When he stood still, the blood of the old man surnamed Lin had already flowed over, mixed with the horse corpse and Gao Yi's own blood. Within these 30 feet, it formed a circular talisman formation. In each of the 7 directions, there was a weird talisman. He then abruptly slapped the bracelet, releasing the vengeful spirits sealed within it. Only then did he form a hand seal. When I, Zhong Shou, do things, I like to give people a taste of their own medicine. Since you want Senior Sister Shinran to be the main spirit of this 7-spirit ring, then I will let you become the carefree mystical demon. Then today, I will also turn you into a wondrous aspect heavenly devil within this ring, never to be free for all eternity. He chanted some secret words, and the blood-colored talisman formation started to give out a weird red light, binding the few souls that had just died not long ago. The bracelet also floated high into the air, and from its original pure white color, it turned into a rainbow color. Then, under Gao Yi's astonished gaze, Zhong Shou suddenly reached out and tapped on the 7-spirit ring. Instantly, a ball of black smoke surged out from Gao Yi's brow and was forcefully sucked into the 7-spirit ring. Looking at the flash of the ring, Zhong Shou didn't feel any joy. His mouth was slightly bitter as he turned around and looked behind him. He saw that Chu Shui's face was ashen white as she hugged Gong Shinran, whose eyes were closed and had no more signs of life. She shook her head. 3 breaths ago, Sister Shinran passed away. She told me that although she had many regrets in her life, at least she could die peacefully. Zhong Shoxin's heart tightened. Surprisingly, it wasn't the pain that he had imagined. It was just a sense of loss and sadness. Then, a thought rose up in his heart as he suddenly roared out. In the depths of his soul, there seemed to be something that was seeping out. Not only was his soul ocean crazily expanding, but the impurities that were sucked into his soul due to the energy-swallowing technique were also being expelled. Threads of green smoke rose up from his head, and the roar became clearer and clearer, lasting for a long time. Chapter 88. This is the evolution of the soul? Chu Shui straightened her back, her heart rippling. She had lived for 13 years and cultivated spiritual cultivation for 7. This was the first time she had seen such a situation. Legend had it that when a spirit master comprehended or their soul cleared, the moment their soul was connected to heaven and earth, their potential would be ignited, causing their soul power to increase and raise their realm. Moreover, among spirit masters with higher talents, such a situation was really common. Which was why when a spirit master cultivated, apart from the accumulation of daily cultivation, they also placed a lot of importance on comprehension and spirit. At this moment, Zhong Shou not only had waves of strong spiritual energy surging out. There was also an indescribable pressure that spread out in all directions along with the roar, covering an area of several thousand feet. It was like in a breath, his soul power realm had crossed an entire level. A full 10 breaths later, Zhong Shou's roar slowly stopped. The emotions in his chest were also slightly vented out. This is the out-of-body realm? Hesitantly raising his hand, in the next instance, he saw balls of spiritual energy gathering in his palm. First, numerous fire energy gathered into a ball of flames. Following which, when it dissipated, it changed into water energy. A small ball of liquid floated 3 feet above his palm. It didn't use any talismans, and it naturally appeared on his palm. It was obviously the out-of-body realm, using only his soul to control the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. TSK, who knew that after my sword Emperor Tan Qiu reincarnated, my greatest achievement wasn't in the martial path. Instead, my soul was the first to reach the out-of-body realm. Slightly shaking his head, Zhong Shou only felt speechless. Out-of-body realm spirit masters could be compared to Xiantian masters. No matter who it was enough to make one excited. However, he was unable to feel happy. Not only did my soul power increase, even the injuries in my soul ocean seemed to have healed. Forget it. With this out-of-body realm spiritual cultivation, I will have some ability to protect myself. It's better than being casually killed by others. Thinking about that, Zhong Shou found it amusing. She felt that she was indeed a little pretentious. Today's ascension of his origin soul was more than just a happy event for him, it was also a turning point. The pressure that had accumulated in his chest for a long time was finally released. At the very least, he wasn't completely powerless right now. After today, no matter who it was, if anyone wanted to make a move on him, they would have to fight to the death. Although he only practiced martial arts in his previous life, he seemed to be very good at using his soul to control the sword. The liquid in his hand was dispersed too. It turned into pure spiritual energy and disappeared into the air. Then, another bolt of lightning appeared in his hand. Lightning flashed, and there seemed to be some kind of power in his body that was responding. It caused this thread of lightning to instantly swell and turn into a streak of purple lightning, wrapping around his arm and giving out a sizzling sound. Sure enough, my control over lightning far surpasses that of other types of spiritual energy. Is it because of the sealed purple lightning, or is it because of the mind core and origin imprint absorbed from the Thunder Phoenix egg? He remembered that the Luan pill refined by that sect did not have such an effect. Within the sect, there were only a few spirit masters who were good at lightning. He also had a feeling that using the heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique to absorb the essence energy within the egg was a better way to obtain the essence of the Thunder Phoenix egg than refining pills. However, as for the specifics, he still needed to test it out. Slightly distracted, Zhong Shou gave out a bitter laugh in the next moment. He nearly forgot about the important matter. Did the stubbornness of Zhong Shou disappear after this matter ended? A slight sadness rose up in his heart once more. He was about to look towards Gong Shinran. Zhong Shou suddenly exclaimed, "Oh, this hook-tail lion!" Only to see that the giant lion that he had forcefully tamed, the spiritual energy around it was so thick that it took physical form. Its aura was roughly enough to go up against him. Grade 4 Rising Moon Lion? This fellow is really lucky. Oh right, there's also Little Gold. This hook-tail lion's bloodline mutated, and broke through to Grade 4 most probably because it comprehended something from the battle with that Xiantian master. At this moment, its vigorous body seemed to be hidden in the moonlight of the night. However, Zhong Shou was too lazy to bother about it. He finally remembered that his first protector spirit beast seemed to have reached a crucial moment. Turning his head, Zhong Shou looked towards his shoulder. He saw that the shattered shell of the Thunder Phoenix egg had totally disappeared. Little Gold also looked like it was full, lying on his shoulder without any energy. Its body was still a silver-white color, but on the surface of its body, there were some lightning patterns. The spiritual energy gathered in its body had increased by roughly 7 times. It stopped by his shoulder and felt a little heavier. The metallic feeling on the surface of its body had also become stronger. This should be the reason why he fed it various metals every day. It was obvious that it had entered Grade 3 long ago. However, the energy within the egg was too huge. It was simply too huge. At this moment, Little Gold was still unable to digest it all. These patterns are lightning patterns? Zhong Shou was slightly startled. Little Gold's evolution this time was slightly different from what he knew in his last life. However, he didn't have to let this fellow walk the path that the person in his last life chose. Moreover, looking at the current situation, not only was it not bad, but it was also beneficial for it. With a slight thought, Little Gold's body shone with threads of lightning. It was also purple, but the color was much lighter. The mental connection between them had also strengthened by a lot at this moment. Zhong Shou smiled. This fellow probably had some new ability. With another flick of his finger, Little Gold's body once again melted and wrapped around his arm. Coincidentally, at this moment, the Rising Moon Lion's aura had totally stabilized. However, it didn't have any intentions of taking revenge, instead slowly walking over and crawling 500 feet in front of him. Its eyes were filled with fear and respect. Zhong Shou was surprised, but he didn't think much about it. Instead, He looked into the distance at the two mythic masters who were fleeing in different directions. One of them was still tangling with the dark chill tiger, while the other was already out of his field of vision. Before this, he was helpless, but now he only needed a thought to kill them. Zhong Shou didn't attack, only the purple lightning in his eyes flashed once more. Shui, I will leave those two to you. No matter what methods you use, only after you kill these two can you return. Since he cultivated the Spirit Master method, he had to have a protector spirit beast and a protector. He didn't want his body to be destroyed when his soul left his body to fight with others. Although Qi Shao hadn't reached the out-of-body realm, he could be considered an example. At this moment, only Chu Shui and Yin Yang could be trusted to protect his spell altar and body. However, this Shui still needed to be trained. Chu Shui exclaimed, slightly shocked. She immediately leaped over, her body as nimble as a cat as she chased after the person who was about to escape 1,000 feet away without any hesitation. At this moment, Zhong Shou looked at the grass in front of him. A small porcelain bottle. It seemed to have fallen out of Gao Yi's sleeves and was still stained with blood. What is this? It looks like a pill? With a suction force from his palm, a yin wind swept up the bottle. Then, Zhong Shou's expression suddenly became really interesting. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.